So I see a lot of hands, show me your hands. Given the number of people we have, and we have a hard time of being out of here at 9 o'clock, I'm going to limit speaking to 2 minutes. So think about how to make things very tight, very concise. To help us make a better decision, stick to very concrete subjects, because 2 minutes goes by real quick. And we'd really like to hear your comments. Please help us make a better decision by informing the things you don't know. If you heard another speaker already give the same information you're planning to give, let us know that's what you wanted to do. You agree or disagree with that. So don't reiterate it. Good evening, everybody. We'll get the Bay's Planning Commission going. Can I have everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Here.
Commissioner Gupta? Here. Commissioner Ketchum?
Here.
Chairman Hansen? And staff is represented by Monowitz, Andropoulos, and Pogo.
So welcome, everybody. Most of you, this is maybe your first time event in front of the Planning Commission. We do have this in Redwood City. I'll outline what will happen tonight. Usually, the staff will give a report. That will run around 10 to 15 minutes, of which the commission will have an opportunity to ask questions. Following that, the applicant will have a presentation. Again, they'll run around 10 or 15 minutes, of which, again, the commission will have an opportunity to ask questions. After that point, we will open it up for public comment. Given the number of responses of people who wish to speak, and try to meet our 9 o'clock commitments to being out of here. The speaking time will be about 2 minutes per person. Help us to make a better decision. Please have your thoughts organized and very concise, because we really want an opportunity to hear each and every one of you who wish to speak. This is a very formal procedure, and it is you're giving actual testimony that is recorded and kept forever. We want everybody to be respected for what they say. There is no clapping during the proceedings. There are no demonstrations during the proceedings. There's no booing during the demonstrations. If you agree with a person and you wish to speak, fill out a yellow form, bring it forward, and we'll give it an opportunity. Steve, would you like to add anything else?
I think that about covers it. And when you're ready, we'll have the
Thank you very much. We'll go to oral communications. Speaking in front of the Planning Commission, you'll always have an opportunity to bring things to our attention that is not on tonight's agenda. There's no action we can take on it. We can consider it for something later or something like that. Does anybody in the room wish to speak to the Planning Commission on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Don't see anybody, so I'll close that portion and go to consideration of minutes.
I will move that we accept the minutes as amended.
I second.
We have a motion and to our regular agenda, of which, Janet, can you please read it in?
Item number 1, owner applicant, Mid-Penn Housing Corporation, file number PLN 2018-00264, location Carlos Street in Moss Beach.
Thank you, Jenna. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Monowitz. I'm the Community Development Director for San Mateo County Planning and Building Department, and I'll introduce tonight's staff report. Our senior planner, Mike Schaller, will be doing the main presentation, but I have a couple of introductory comments I'd like to share to you. First has to do with the scope of tonight's item. Tonight, the Planning Commission is considering an amendment to our local coastal program. The local coastal program sets the standards for future development, and future development must obtain a coastal development permit before proceeding. The standard of review for the coastal development is consistency with our local coastal program. So tonight, the Planning Commission will be considering an amendment to the local coastal program to accommodate an affordable housing project that is of lesser intensity than the affordable housing project currently allowed by our local coastal program. I'd also like to provide some background information to put this amendment request into a larger context. The special provisions regarding coastal development were put in place by citizen initiative in 1972, called Proposition 20. That was followed by the California Coastal Act of 1976, which required local governments to develop local coastal programs that protect coastal resources and coastal access to the shoreline. San Mateo County was the first county in the state of California to obtain Coastal Commission certification of its local coastal program. One of the reasons we were successful in that regard was we were able to demonstrate that the plan for our entire coastline protects coastal resources by setting aside the vast majority of our coast for resource protection and agricultural use. We also needed to accommodate development and comply with state housing laws. And we did that by ensuring that development was clustered in areas where infrastructure was available, and drawing a hard line around those areas designated for development so we could continue to protect our sensitive resource lands and agricultural areas. When we developed our local coastal program in the late 1970s, it was subject to an intensive, rigorous public input process. I've been told there were over 70 public hearings leading up to the development of the local coastal program that's in place. Also at that time, the Coastal Act contained provisions intended to encourage affordable housing, so the coast did not become a place only for the privileged, but a place where everybody could afford to live and to enjoy. And to meet those requirements, the county not only established a few sites within our urban areas for affordable housing, we were required to do so. That was necessary to comply with the Coastal Act housing and coastal access provisions. The designation of the site that is the subject of tonight's hearing has been in place since 1980. The designation of sites specifically for affordable housing is a unique resource that you can hardly find throughout the state. A site specifically designated only for affordable housing is a unique resource that enables our ability to meet our housing needs. Now, we need to do so in a manner that's consistent with the Coastal Act. And tonight you will hear our analysis of why we believe that this change, which once again reduces the intensity of the development currently allowed by the local coastal program, is consistent with the Coastal Act. So with that, I'll turn it over to our senior planner, Mike Schaller.
Commissioners, as stated before, Mid-Penn Housing, with the assistance of the San Mateo County Housing Authority, is pursuing the approvals necessary to develop 71 affordable housing units on an approximately 11-acre parcel parcel within Lost Beach that is already designated for this purpose by the county local postal program. The first step in the process, which is the subject of this hearing, is to make amendments to the general plan, the LCP, and the zoning regulations to allow a smaller, and less impactful project than the one previously approved at this site. The project is located near the corner of Carlos and Sierra Streets in Lost Beach. The site is surrounded by single-family residential development on the east and south sides. The Highway 1 right-of-way lies to the west, and 16th Street borders the site on the north side with Montero Creek to the back. Vegetation on the site consists primarily of grasslands, coastal scrub, and invasive species. A forested area consisting primarily of pines and cypress trees occupies the northern part of the parcel and slopes down to 16th Street. Remnant concrete building foundations associated with the previous use of the site for military purposes are also present in the middle portion of the site. The site slopes from east to west. The central portion of the site, where the majority of future development is proposed, is relatively flat due to the previous use of the site as a military facility. The areas on the north and south side of the parcel have a much steeper slope, which is one reason the applicant is proposing to leave these areas as open space. As mentioned previously, the site was flood zoned as a PUD in 1986. It specifically authorizes 148 dwelling units with a mix of 96 market rate units and 52 affordable units. Approximately half of the site would be used for parking areas and access roads. As you can see, looking at the site plan, the 1986 staff reports, very little of the site would be left as open space, or as recreational open space. Development of the PUD design would require a substantial amount of grading to create relatively flat parking areas and building paths. And most of the trees on the site would have to be removed to accommodate this design. The proposal before you today would shrink this down substantially from 141 proposed dwelling units to 71, resulting in a density of 6.5 dwelling units per acre, which is consistent with the adjacent neighborhood. Proposed PUD clusters the development within a 5.4 acre area near the center of the parcel and preserves the remainder of the site as open space. The development would be permitted by the proposed rezoning, subject to the approval of a future coastal development permit application. Consists of 18 two-story buildings containing 2 to 4 units in each building, with a single building that will house primarily a manager's office, community room, and a laundry room. The applicant has also incorporated a community garden, a children's play area, and public walking trail into the PUD. Here's some artist renderings of what the site development would look like. This is viewed from the outside of from the surrounding public streets.
Face the microphone, please.
These are views from the surrounding streets, Sierra and Carlos Street and Lincoln Street. One of the findings required for approval of the proposed PUD zoning is whether the proposed project is a desirable guide for future growth for this area. Staff believes a proposed reduction in the number of dwelling units compared to the number permitted by the existing zoning leads to better protection of coastal resources and integration into the community. The proposed project will generate less traffic when compared to the build-out of the existing zoning. Because there will be fewer dwelling units, the current proposal will consume less water and sewer capacity compared to build-out of the existing zoning. The proposal before you today will require less grading and alteration of the site when build-out of the existing than compared to build-out of the existing zoning. The current proposal will reduce vegetation removal and avoid significant impacts to sensitive habitat compared to build-out. The The current proposal will reduce impacts to coastal views compared to the existing zoning by, again, concentrating development near the center of the project parcel and retaining larger buffer areas for adjacent And finally, the current proposal will provide an increased number of affordable housing units compared to the existing zoning at a time of a state-declared housing emergency. For these reasons, staff believes the proposal before you today is a more suitable pattern of development for this site than the current zone. In closing, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission would recommend that the Board of Supervisors direct staff to submit the proposed amendments to the Coastal Commission for certification by adopting the findings in attachment A of their staff report.
Chair, I have a couple closing comments. Is my mic on? Okay. So, as Mike pointed out, there's a reduction in units, yet there's an increase in affordable housing, and I just wanted to make sure you understood that point. That is because under the existing planned unit development zoning, only a certain percentage of those units need to be affordable. Under the current proposal, all of the units, with the exception of the managed house unit, will be affordable. And I just wanted to reiterate tonight, we're just talking about that zone change. There has been, I think, concern expressed that the amendment will somehow affect the appealability of a future project to the Coastal Commission. And I want to clarify that tonight's action will have no impact on the appealability of the project. Appealability is based on geographic location and whether a proposed use is what is termed a principally permitted use. In the case of this location, it is not within the geographic appeals area, and the site is designated by the local coastal program for affordable housing. Therefore, the project is principally permitted use. As a result, any future permit approved by the Planning Commission may be appealed to the Board of Supervisors, but will not be appealable to the Coastal Commission. That concludes my remarks.
One follow-up question on that. So there's going to be an opportunity later that there is a project coming forward, we will go through this process of proving what's actually getting out there. There's really no project today.
That is correct, and it's worth noting that there will be additional opportunities for public input. In addition to public hearing before the Planning Commission, this local coastal program amendment needs to be authorized for submission to the Coastal Commission by the Board of Supervisors. So there'll be a Board of Supervisors hearing, and then after it gets submitted for Coastal Commission certification, the Coastal Commission will conduct a public hearing. So there will be at minimum 3 public hearings at which the public will have an opportunity to testify regarding the proposed amendments.
Does any of the commissioners wish to have a question of staff?
None at the moment.
How's this? Better. How's this? All right. My first question is about, this parcel seems to be missing the DR zoning designation, the design review designation, and should this be added?
So the question was, should the design review designation be added to this site? And I think the answer is yes, and that has been accomplished not through adding a zoning overlay, but in the specific terms of the planned unit development ordinance that is before you today. Within the ordinance, there is a requirement that the project go before the design review committee and receive a recommendation from the design review committee before action can be taken by this commission.
Well, I just asked because all the other zoning districts in the new codes have DR, even the other two communities that just have that there. So, make it obvious. That's my
We
comment.
can't hear you. Please speak up.
Very sorry. Okay, on the affordability, there's a discrepancy in the staff report about whether moderate income households are included under the maximum 80% area median income definition. So how is moderate income defined for this purpose?
If it's okay with the commissioners, I'd ask the applicant to address that question, or perhaps our housing staff can assist. I know we have staff from our housing department here.
Well, maybe I could put this another way to shortcut answering that. So the proposed LCP policy 3.15 amendment has the word, I think it should match what's in the PUD, and it has the wording I'm looking for. Basically, it says it's for low income defined as up to 80% of area median income except for the manager's unit. So those two key, the manager's unit needs to be added to, exception for that needs to be added to the PUD, as well as, that's my thought.
Staff has no objection to that clarification. For just to make sure the audience heard, the requested clarification is to include the language regarding what is considered affordable within the PUD ordinance, and staff is willing to incorporate that change.
Thank you. Okay, so the PUD process here. The process laid out in Chapter 9 of the zoning regulations says that before a new PUD is adopted, the Planning Commission shall make specific findings on the precise plan. Those findings would normally be informed by a full CEQA and planning permit review of the project. Existing county PUDs all reference development projects that have already been approved by the Planning Commission. So my questions on this are, has the county ever adopted a PUD before the planning permit was approved? And why is this one being done in the reverse order?
So the typical process, or the process that's been used in the past, and the process that was used for the PUD that's currently on the book, involved the concurrent review and approval of both the zoning amendment as well as the project. So when the last PUD was submitted for Coastal Commission certification, it was accompanied by a coastal development permit approval that would only take effect upon certification. The reason that the Planning and Building Department advised the applicant in this case not to file both the permit application and the LCP amendment request concurrently is because we recognize that through public testimony and the public review process from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors to the Coastal Commission, there may be the need to make changes to the site design. And when you apply for the development permit, you have to get down to greater detail about construction methods that would be have to be redone in the event that significant changes to the proposal were made through the LCP amendment process. So by having the coastal development permit follow the amendment process, the permit applicant will have the opportunity to address any issues of concern that the Planning Commission or the Board or the Coastal Commission may have regarding the site design proposed by the planned unit developer.
So this wasn't a request of the Coastal Commission, this was a Planning Department decision to do it in this order?
My experience of working with the Coastal Commission is this is their preferred order as well. And I have a couple examples of that.
Yeah, I had looked, it looks to me like there's only 3 PUDs that have ever been approved in the coastal zone in the county, and 2 of those were before the Coastal Act. So this is really the only one. And, you know, when you read the staff report, it references, well, this, you know, that timeline, and it shows when the permit was approved, and then its later date to approve the zoning amendment. So it seemed as though this was the only one. It's difficult for me. I mean, I understood that this phase was to be very straightforward. reducing the density and the number of units. And yet, when we see the PUD before us, it specifically states the exact details of this conceptual project as though we had reviewed it. And so it's not a matter of just here today approving the downzoning. It sounds like we really need to look at every point in that PUD and see if we agree with that.
My only response to that comment would be that the language of the PUD makes it clear that there may be adjustments to the project required at the development stage. So to the degree further information and review during the permit review process identifies issues that would make this commission feel that adjustments are necessary, you will still have the opportunity to recommend those adjustments.
Okay, so maximum building height in this proposed PUD doesn't have any give. You know, what's there now is going to be forever the maximum height limit. So I wanted to suggest, as we, staff is aware that the method of measurement of building height, two ways, the direct method, kind of what you see is what you get, or this averaging method. That's not the scientific definition, but whatever. Anyway, so I wanted to just bring this up now. We have the MCC and the COSA Design Review Committee have been requesting for a couple of years to get this definition of how building height is measured consistent in the Mid-Coast. It mostly is. But, so I would request that we add the definition, which is building height shall be measured from the lower of natural or finished grade to the topmost point of the building immediately above. I would request that that be in the PUD, and then you could state straightforward the maximum height in feet rather than referencing elevations that are buried in these unapproved plans. So it would come out like buildings shall be limited to 2 stories and maximum height shall not exceed X number of feet, whatever you decide. And that allows a direct comparison of the height limits, which would be somewhere between 37 feet to accommodate the project as proposed, and 28 feet for consistency with the surrounding neighborhood and all the other Mid-Coast residential and most commercial districts. So I guess my question is, what is this the right place in this meeting to ask this question? And what is the potential here to add this definition so people know what we're talking about on the different height limits?
Yes, the height of the structures is certainly a topic for discussion today. The maximum is established by the PUD, but it is just that, a maximum. At the project level review stage, in addition to making sure that development is within that maximum, it needs to comply with other standards related to the protection of coastal view sheds and so forth. So I would encourage the commission to think about the degree to which requiring a lowering of height is necessary to protect coastal resources and the feasibility of doing so, because I think from staff's perspective, we would advise against changing the height limit in a manner that unnecessarily reduces our ability to provide affordable housing units. Where it's necessary to protect coastal views, I think that is totally appropriate. I believe the applicant is available to speak to this point as well.
Well, without making a decision on what the height should be, could we still add the definition and then compare oranges to oranges? You know what I mean?
Yes, and what I'd like to hear from the applicant when they speak is what, if we are to measure from existing or finished grade, what is the feasible height that they can work with without reducing units?
Okay, that's all my questions for now. Thank you.
I have one question. I don't know which speaker to go to. The number of units, buildable units, is used in a lot of reports, particularly the A-bag and other housing elements of our general plan. When we downzone, particularly, let's say, something that is affordable housing, are we making any accommodations elsewhere in the county to recover the same number that we've been reporting over the years?
So the county, like all other local jurisdictions in the Bay Area, is assigned affordable housing allocation. And we have the responsibility of demonstrating to the state that there are adequate number of sites available to meet, to provide the housing units that we've been assigned. So to the degree the reduction in the number of units here diminishes our ability to meet the housing allocation established by the state, we will need to make up these units elsewhere in the county. That being said, when we identify to the state where we believe we can achieve our housing units, we've taken a conservative approach and recognized that sites such as these coastal sites have certain constraints, and so we haven't placed an expectation of extremely large number of units on this site. So I don't believe that if the commission were to approve this reduction in density, that it would create a significant deficit in our ability to meet our allocation.
Thank you. We'll go to the applicant's presentation.
Andrew, you'll have 15 minutes.
Can everyone hear me? My name is Andrew Belak. I'm from Mid-Penn Housing. Chair Hansen and commissioners, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I also want to thank the staff for the detailed staff report and all the preparation for this meeting. And I want to thank the public for coming here tonight, for offering your comments and ideas and suggestions. We've done a lot of work to get to where we are over the last few years, so we're really excited to have the opportunity to share that with you tonight. While we're going to the next slide, I just want to introduce the team members who are here tonight from Mid-Penn, Jan Lindenthal, Nevada Merriman, myself, and Serena Epp. We also have multiple members of our consultant team here tonight. They've been really integral to our project so far and supporting our work. So I want to recognize the work they've done here as well. I'll just talk a little bit more about Mid-Penn Housing while we're getting that set up here. I think we are there now. Great. If we can start on slide 3, that would be great. We are a mission-driven nonprofit. We're based here in San Mateo County. We're actually in our 50th year, and we focus on affordable housing. We are a developer, we're an owner, we manage affordable housing, and we also provide services. We have 30 properties here in the county, and that includes 3 here on the coast side. We are committed to environmentally sustainable, financially sound, well-designed communities that provide affordable housing and on-site services to folks who otherwise would be forced to commute from outside the county or live in unsustainable or double, tripled up in units, or at worst suffer from homelessness. I was looking at the most recent statistics from San Mateo County on homelessness, and we found that it's increased 20% in the last 2 years. There's more than 1,500 people currently suffering from homelessness, and that includes 60 unsheltered people just in the unincorporated mid-coast. We serve a really diverse range of people, so that includes people at the very low and extremely low income level, and also includes people at the moderate income levels as well, which can include public workers, healthcare workers, teachers, and we know that affordable housing is really just the start. Real changes happen when residents are supported in achieving their goals. So that includes resident services as a really critical component of our mission. As an example of that, after-school programming at all of our properties. That's something that we would be providing at Cypress Point. Children would participate in academic literacy focused 5-day after-school programs, and adults also have access to education classes such as financial literacy or career development. We're also experienced with implementing local preference programs for people who live or work in the area, and that's something we're going to talk about here as well. We own and operate all of our properties for the long term, so being good neighbors is really fundamental to what we do. I know you heard a little bit about the parcel at the beginning, and I want to highlight a couple things about that, which is that when we started looking at this proposal, the first thing we wanted to understand was the context and some of the history. We know this site has been used for a number of years for different purposes, most recently, a little more than 40 years ago, as a school, and as a Navy site, and it's one of 3 priority sites in the local coastal program designated for affordable housing. It's also included in the county's housing element, and it was identified as a site for affordable housing more than 40 years ago. You also heard about the planned unit development that was approved in 1986 that did not move forward, but that is what sets the current zoning at 148 units. So the first thing we did after understanding a little bit about the context of the site was to start a conversation with the community. We are really committed to having an open dialogue, to hearing from people, and to having difficult conversations very early on. That is fundamental towards our work. So starting in 2016, we had 3 open houses, and we've been having discussions and meetings and conversations ever since. We've had dozens of meetings on the coast side with folks in the area. We've presented multiple times to the MCC and at a pre-application hearing. We are really committed to having an open dialogue and a transparent process. And we're here tonight because we're still committed to that, because we very, very much believe we have a long ways to go in this process, but we very much believe in continuing to have that conversation. A few things that we've heard at some of the initial meetings and over the last few years are about density and making sure we're matching the neighborhood character, ensuring that there's adequate parking. We know traffic is an issue that people have raised and that we have studied very closely, about open areas, ensuring that that is available, and having water and sewer, ensuring that we're at adequate capacity in terms of existing infrastructure, doing a very thorough environmental review, and also addressing the housing needs here on the coast side, particularly with interest in serving people who are in the area living or working. You heard about the previous PUD, 148 units. This proposal was 35% affordable, and we recognized early on this was not something that we wanted to propose, that we did not see this as a best fit for the community. So in 2016, we brought this very initial conceptual site plan. This was at 80 units. Obviously a significant reduction for what's there now. 1.8 parking spaces per unit. It was preserving about half its open space, obviously adding a lot to what was there before under the previous proposal, and 100% affordable except for a manager's unit, as that is very much built into our mission. We heard a lot of feedback on that, and we've made a number of changes along the way, and I don't think this highlights all of them, but just a few in terms of the site plan itself. Over the last few years, we've worked on that a lot, and this is what we are bringing here today, which is a 71-unit proposal that increased the parking ratio to make sure we were fully capturing it on site, preserving half the site as open space again, and of course, continuing to commit to affordable housing. I want to show a video that we've been working on that I think dives into some of the more details about the general concept of our plan, of Mid-Penn, and this proposal.
Mid-Penn's mission for nearly 50 years has been to build high-quality, affordable housing communities that allow people from all ethnic, social, and economic backgrounds to live in dignity, harmony, and mutual respect. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here on the coast.
Housing is a huge challenge for everyone on the coast, and it's particularly acute for people who are trying to earn a living and not living with their parents. The cost of housing has gotten so extraordinary that it's basically impossible to own a home, and it's really difficult on the coast to find rental housing as well.
I was born and raised here in Half Moon Bay. I'm a proud mother of my 7-year-old. I work here in Half Moon Bay for the medical center. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a home here. I had to move out of the area, and now I'm struggling with having to commute.
For people who commute a long ways, it's an enormous stress on their family lives and their health. Even for people who live close, it's just, if you have a place to live, you're paying an unreasonably large portion of your income just to be able to afford to live.
Es mucho para manejar, que para salir a trabajar es mucho tiempo, pues para mucho tiempo para salir a trabajar. Y sí hay muchos que se han movido porque una cosa es que no hay renta, no hay accesible, no hay, se mueven para otro lado.
We are a little bit of a test case in San Mateo County. How we balance all of the job creation with creating affordable housing. We have a major jobs housing imbalance. The question is, how do you do it in a way that really acknowledges that people on the coast want to maintain this beautiful, bucolic area we have for ourselves here. It really comes with the design, it comes with the location, and being deeply thoughtful, preserving open space, and preserving the lifestyle that is so special for people who live on this beautiful coast.
In planning our communities, the first people that we listen to are our neighbors. What we've done here with Cypress Point is propose a project that's entirely consistent with the needs on the coast of families and workers, and with the concerns that have been expressed by our neighbors. We then began looking at the neighborhood and wanted to make sure that the new community that we would design there would fit in, that it would be compatible with the existing neighborhood, would be of a similar scale and density. And that's what we've done. We've designed 71 affordable homes in a mix of 2-story buildings spread throughout the site, but still retaining a significant amount of on-site open space and trails going through the site. We're also providing a community center where we'll provide our after-school program and other activities for our residents.
We support the Cypress family community because I think, at least for the coast, I know so many families that don't have stable homes, that are just, moving from one home to another. Rents are way too high here, people just can't afford them.
We need to build more houses, we need to build more housing at all levels, and we particularly need to build housing that's more affordable. And developments like Cypress Point are absolutely essential to that. We need the kind of housing that is in demand for people who need that at a reasonable price.
It's very exciting. It's an opportunity that I'm really looking for. I really want to stick with my family. I want my daughter to be happy with school and not having to be commuting or moving out, changing schools. I feel like this is a great chance for us to finally get a home.
That's what happens in affordable housing. People's lives are transformed. We have people that come up to us at grand openings and say, I've done a 180. You showed me that you're going to deliver on what you've said you're going to do. That's what we get up and do every day, is honor those commitments that we make to our neighbors and our stakeholders. And that's what we intend to do.
So I think one thing we just really wanted to convey from that video is also how personal this issue is for people, and I think that's sometimes hard to convey in a presentation like this, but just how much having access to stable and an affordable home makes such an enormous difference in people's lives. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the actual units that we're proposing here. So what we're proposing is a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. As I mentioned before, we also serve a diverse range of people, and that's also what we're proposing here. So that would include people at some of the lower income levels, 30% area median income, that's how you measure income, is through the area median income calculation. And that means that a family of 4 could earn a maximum of $43,980 to qualify for that unit. At the same time, there's a wide range, so at the higher end, you'd see units that are set at the 80% level as well, and that means a family of 4 would have to earn less than $117,000. So you can see there's quite a wide range of units within that. We mentioned density before. This aerial just gives you a sense of how our site relates to the neighborhood. And I think one thing we want to note is also the neighborhood zone medium density, which is 6.1 to 8.7 units per acre. What we are proposing is 6.5 units per acre, so it's right in the middle, / on the slightly lower end of that. I want to just hit on a few of the points of how we have responded to the feedback that we've heard. We have completed a comprehensive traffic study and identified multiple mitigation strategies and are continuing to collaborate on potential solutions. Water and sewer allocation is designated and reserved for this project, and we are using significantly less than what is allocated because of the existing PUD being much larger. We have done a very thorough set of reports that have been made public on a wide range of topics, on biology, obviously on traffic, on emergency access, on a wide range of categories, and those are going to be in support of the Coastal Commission and the county's environmental reviews. We also heard a lot about preference. So Mid-Penn has requested, and the county housing department has approved a preference for coastal workers and residents on 36 out of the units, so a majority of the units. I just wanted to do a quick highlight about our renderings. You've seen these in the video. And I think one point in response to Commissioner Ketchum's question that we can talk more is that the buildings are designed to really match the existing PUD right now in terms of height. We look forward to discussing that more. One more quick image here. And the last thing I wanted to highlight is just the process that we heard a little bit about, but just noting this is a complex and extensive process. So we have a long ways to go, and we look forward to discussing more, but there are many public reviews remaining, and we look forward to discussing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The building height, these are 2-story buildings, so
Yes.
the height doesn't take away any stories or any square footage of the units or anything. It's just about aesthetics, right?
Well, I think if you, before getting too much into it, I think what makes sense, maybe we actually have some additional slides we can share on height, if that would make sense to understand a little bit about how our height is measured.
Well, I think it will be helpful to hear from the community on this. So these plans are currently at, the tallest building is 37 feet high.
I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
I took that from the plans, from the elevations. It was 36, 10 1/4 inch, so I just rounded up to 37. Okay. And just to know that we're not asking you to reduce the size of the units or anything like that. That's all.
Understood, and I think the question and what we wanted to discuss more is, I understand you're using the particular means of measurement based on the top line of the roof.
That's what we would
right.
like to stick with. It's consistent with what we have on the coast side.
Understood. I think changing the height does have potential cost implications that we are aware of the development based on the level of the roof. And that's something we can discuss more as well, but it is not solely about aesthetics, but we understand aesthetics is part of it, and I think the reason we have some additional slides is also to share what we think is sort of the impact of aesthetics and where we are now versus potentially changing the height.
All right. Well, it's just that the policies talk about being compatible with the neighborhood, consistent with the neighborhood, and since virtually the entire mid-coast is at 20, I just wanted to bring that up. Thanks.
Questions?
This is probably for Steve. The height and aesthetics, is that something that we would probably go more in detail, in depth, at the design review stage.
The Commission will certainly have an opportunity to do that as part of the design review. What we're doing tonight in establishing the new zoning is establish a maximum height. During the permit review, we'll have to make sure that the development not only is within the maximum height, but does not block coastal views and propose a design that is compatible with the community. So there'll be additional opportunity for discussion on this issue later.
Okay, thank you.
To piggyback on that question, is that part of the PUD that we are approving at this time, the maximum height?
Yes, that is correct. The terms of the PUD establish a maximum height. I think to Commissioner's Ketchum point, it doesn't state the method by which it will be measured. And so if the Commission desired to be more specific in that regard, tonight would be an opportunity to do it, but tonight is not the last time the Commission will have an opportunity to talk about height and aesthetics.
Thank you, Steve. So, question, I have different kind of questions. You have this table about the range of affordability. You have some, what would be the monthly rent for different levels of income? Is that something
Yes.
that you have put together?
We have a slide that we can show that
Okay.
demonstrates that information. You can see at different levels here, so that was similar to the slide we showed on the PowerPoint, which is based on the income levels and the maximum income that someone could earn. And then simultaneously, we would have, and I want to note that 100% AMI is what the median is from the county. We're not proposing units at that level. We're proposing 80% and below. So these are the incomes, and then if you go to the next slide, you'd see these are the rents we're proposing. So it is all within that range. Anywhere from 1 bedroom to 2 bedroom, you can see it, 740 is starting at the 1 bedroom at the lowest level and going up from there.
Okay. And that doesn't have anything to do with the size of the family? Like, well, if there are 4 people living in...
Yeah, the rent, I mean, this is based on sort of an average size, an assumption of what the household size would be, but it is based on the size of the family. So this isn't an exact of what the rent would be. It's set by a formula, and that's regulated.
And like that's based upon the AMI today. Is that correct?
Yes, this is the AMI actually of 2018. That is the AMI that we are currently setting at.
Okay. Okay. But by the time these units are built, that may change?
It's a possibility the AMIs can change. We always need to set the AMIs in a way that ensures that it is affordable to people and is not, unnecessarily burdening people if they can't afford an increase.
Thank you. You had also mentioned that you have a total of 3 sites on the coast where you have built housing?
Yes.
Okay. And they are complete?
Yes.
They are done? Right. Can you tell us a little about those? How are they doing? How big are they? Like, how many units?
Sure, we have the 3 actually in here in Half Moon Bay. 2 are for families, 1 are for seniors, Main Street Park, Moon Ridge, and Half Moon Village. They're all very successful developments. They all received a lot of applications at the time of lease up. They've all been around for at least, I think the most recent one is Half Moon Village. Actually, I'm going to see maybe Nevada Merriman, our Director of Development, may be able to come up and speak a little bit about some of the history of that if you want, or
maybe later.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So all these housing that are there, did you give preference to the live work, however you define that?
So it depends. There's not always a live-work preference. It often is formally established by the local agency. So that's why in this case it would be the county housing department that is officially saying like you can have a live-work preference. It's implemented and it's establishing the live-work preference, and then Mid-Penn would be implementing it. So in the case of Moonridge, there was a live-work preference that was established that is for farm workers, actually, and that's a specific type, and that's not the most common, but was a specific need that was being served. So we have experience with implementing preferences all around the county, but it often depends upon the particulars of the situation and whether there's a particular goal of serving a local need.
And off the top of your head, do you know if 100% of those are farm workers or whoever you give priority to?
I don't know off the top of my head 100%. We can certainly get back to you on that. I do know from our experiences where we do have these preferences, we have a lot of experiences with all of the units that have a preference on them tend to be filled by people who meet that preference because there is such a high demand.
Thank you.
And I don't know if we have an opportunity to show, if there are more questions about the height or we want to discuss that at all, we have a couple slides if you want.
Can you get to the mic?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Andrew. And Peter Waller with Piatok, one of the architects, part of the consultant team. Good evening, Commissioners. On the height, I think this is an important conversation. I appreciate the focus on clarifying the way height is measured. I understand that's very critical and it makes a big difference, so we certainly welcome that. I think we made a lot of comparisons this evening between the existing PUD, the original PUD, and the current one, and that's clear in the staff report and the table that's right here. I think the one thing that, from our point of view, is not quite the way we would state it is the comparison of height. It says the original was 28 feet average, and that we're proposing 32 to 36 feet average. In reality, our buildings are all identical scale. We do have a slide that would show that. We're going to change to pull that out. But I'll speak to it. We could pull that out. What's changing simply is we're applying a different height measure. We're saying, because we understand the original PUD was measured midpoint of roof to an average grade point. And if you align our buildings, they're the same scale buildings. That was always our goal, keep them on the same scale. But now what's happening is the height measurements evolving, and that's fine, we understand. We're measuring it differently, and that's the difference in height. It's not that we've come back and said, great, we want two-story buildings with bigger two-story buildings. No, they're just two-story buildings with pitched roofs. And so we're certainly willing to work through this with community design review and work on adjustments, but we want to be very clear that we're really not, the way we see it, asking for additional height. And we think the pitched roofs really help the character of this fit with the surrounding community. So glad to have a lot of conversation about this, but I think it's something in the staff report that really jumps out at everybody is, wow, they're going from 28 to 36 feet. Now there are two of our buildings that just because they're wider, the roof goes up higher. There's probably more flexibility to adjust as the vast majority of our buildings are really probably significantly lower in scale than the original building. And here's this quick comparison we did, and I hope everyone's hearing me okay. So on the top, on the left, is the architectural drawings from that original PUD, two-story buildings, rendered in that kind of classic 70s style, which is nice. And then our buildings shown on the right-hand side. And they're really the same scale, same roof pitch. You see the enlargement down below. And we're just demonstrating that, you know, our buildings on average are 28 feet or less if you measure from the midpoint of the roof to an average grade. Now, they would be perhaps 32 to 36, depending on which building, if you measure the peak. That's the same as the earlier PUD. So we're talking about a change in the measurement. Yeah.
So I wasn't really wanting to compare it with the earlier PUD because time has moved on. And basically, and actually the S17, most of the residential and the neighboring community, it's been a 28-foot direct measure height limit since 1980. And so that's what I'm comparing it. This community is going to fit in to the existing neighborhood. And so the goal in my mind would be to have it be comparable to that. Not, I understand.
Yeah.
It used to be have this averaging, and that's sort of the thorn in our side here now. We have a couple of remaining districts that are like that.
Right, right.
Okay. Thank you, though.
And I will just, I understand that, and I'll just say there are many homes, lovely homes in the neighborhood that certainly are over 28 feet. So there's quite a variety of height out there, even things that have been built since that time frame. So glad to have the conversation about making it fit with the neighborhood. Thanks.
I have one quick question. Any estimates of how many residents will be working on the coast side as opposed to the bay side?
I'm sorry, any estimate of how many residents would be working in our proposed development? Or
Yes. Do you have any estimates based on either on your existing, how many live and work on the coast side?
I think that's, I would have to probably get back to you on that, I would say. I mean, by having this preference on 36 of units, it means we would expect, in all likelihood, those 36 units would be occupied by people who live or work on the coast side. I can't say for sure whether it would be live or work. I think we'd want to get back to you about sort of the exact comparison, but we would expect that those 36 units would be occupied because the demand is so high by people who either live or work, one or the other.
Yeah. So when you present at a future time, that'd be another question I will be looking for an answer to. Any other follow-ups?
On the live work, as you know, we have the opposite jobs, housing and balance, as the Bayside over here. And so basically anyone who lives at this community that commutes over the hill will only add to our traffic woes. So this preference is really critical. And just wanted to make that point. And also on setbacks. The front setback is 11 feet, which is normally it's 20 feet around here. And so with such a large parcel, I wondered why that needed to be an exception like that.
Sure. I think our Chief Real Estate Officer, Jan Lindenthal, maybe wanted to speak to your first comment, and then I'll probably have architect speak to the second one.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to speak briefly to the live-work preference. So there are, based on the most recent data that we've been able to get, 1,400 jobs in the mid-coast area. So our intention by providing this live-work preference is to be able to capture those people who currently work here but aren't able to live here. And what we do when we implement a preference like this, and this goes to your question about what percentage of people might meet the preference, is although with the county's approval, we can set aside 36 of the homes for people who meet that preference. Our intention is to heavily market in the mid-coast area to ensure that residents here and workers here have maximum opportunity to apply. And often when we have a preference like that, we far exceed the number of people that meet the preference living in the community beyond the units that are set aside for it, because we do that intensive local marketing. And so we would market to employers, we've talked to the school district, the Chamber of Commerce, churches, all as much local outreach as we can do to maximize that opportunity for local folks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Did you want to respond on the setback issue? Yeah, and I think if we have that slide on the screen quickly, this is another one we're glad to address. The situation occurs only at the property line nearest Carlos, and as we try to get up on the screen, what you'll see is there's quite a wide right-of-way along Carlos. The building itself is set back 50 feet, I think, from the Carlos right-of-way, and then there's a very steep hill, and then the property line, which then does kind of a little bit of a jog because there's a parcel that was carved out of that right-of-way at some point. So anyway, so if folks can read this, and I know it's a little bit close, but the building that's running parallel to the property line, shown dark, that's where we are asking to come within 11 feet because that's that zone that is relatively flat and is most buildable on the site. And we asked for that exception on the normal setbacks because as a practical matter, we're quite a ways from Carlos. I think it says 54 feet from the roadway. Now Carlos could get widened or adjusted, sidewalk someday, who knows? But it's never going to get widened significantly because as you go to the south, you see there's a home there and a parcel that's been carved out that sort of jogs into that right away. So I think as a practical matter, there's not really anything that's going to get built out there. It's a pretty steep slope. It really allows us to disturb the site less. If we had to move that building up the hill, complicated to explain, but it pushes parking lots around, it's tougher to make parking, more retaining walls. So it's a very specific site condition that results in that request.
Are those trees existing between?
A mix of existing and proposed that are shown between the building and the road. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to open up this portion now for the public. Again, if you wish to speak, please fill out a yellow form and bring it forward to Janet. Janet, I'll let you take on. She'll be announcing the speaker and the speaker following up. There's a chair up here, so you can make this transition a little faster.
Thank you. First speaker is Sean McFetrich, followed by Greg. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the last name, but D is the last name, or the initial is D, so you'll be following him.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Sean McFetrich. I'm superintendent at Cabrillo Unified School District. I speak tonight not on behalf of the CUSD governing board, nor do I speak on behalf of our employees, but I did inform our board and our union leaders that I would speak tonight in my professional role to register my support for the Cypress Point Affordable Housing Project. I will try to keep my comments brief and to the point. I thank you for offering the public an opportunity to speak tonight on this important public matter. Some may know that Cabrillo Unified School District, like many California school districts, is suffering from inadequate state and federal funding. And this, along with declining enrollment, has led to a budget crisis that has required we cut $2.6 million from our annual budget this year in order for us to remain fiscally solvent and retain local control, so we're not taken over by county and state actors. As a result, like most districts, we are unable to pay educators and support staff what is required to recruit and retain them to live and work here. And this budget crisis and this lack of funding have taken a toll on district staff, and that in turn has a negative impact on the students, the families, and the coastside community we serve. Thus, I want to offer my professional perspective. Many of our employees could qualify for affordable housing in this proposed project, particularly because there are preference points for those who work on the coast side, and so I believe it is appropriate and important for me to speak in support of Cypress Point because it could help us attract teachers in the early stages of their careers and also support staff who help educate children on the coast side. This is a housing project that could be affordable to many of our employees, and that could help us attract and keep staff in the district. Thank you for your consideration of the needs of Cabrillo Unified School District, coastside educators, and the children and families we jointly serve.
Thank you.
Greg, followed by Carlisle and Young.
Greg Diegas, Montero. I support amending the LCP, but not with the proposed amendment, and let me give you a couple of thoughts on how I think the LCP should be amended. There are other people here who can better speak to the traffic burdens, the inadequate environmental review, and the increased disaster evacuation and wildfire risks, which endanger the health and safety of all existing residents. But let's consider two things. The water infrastructure. In Montero, the mountain aquifer funded by the district has been tracked by hydrologists who found that the sustainable supply has been over-reported by 50%. Normally, the age of the water drawn from that aquifer is 24 years. In the recent drought, the water supply drained was deemed ancient, thousands of years old, which tells you we're hitting rock bottom. Yet the county wants to add hundreds of more residents, thousands, if the current LCP holds. Further, the current water storage for fire, the code requirements are only for a single residence 2-hour fire, when a design with dense development such as this is more likely to result in fires that consume multiple adjacent dwellings. Now, this is occurring in a region where the fire hydrant pressure is the lowest in the district, and less than 10% has been tested, well, excuse me, over 90% is untested in the last decade. So what additional fire, water storage, and infrastructure should accompany this project? These hundreds of people? Apparently, the county hasn't considered this. Further, when Montero recently tried to extend its water rights into the watershed to improve water security, that effort to date has been blocked by the county. Yet you are proposing putting hundreds more people there without the extra water. Now, there's also the issue of fiscal sustainability.
Need to wrap up.
I would like to see a comprehensive statement on behalf of the county that tallies up all the costs. Okay, the traffic, the water and sewer infrastructure that has to be added, etc. And I haven't seen that. Perhaps not surprising in a county with a $4 billion unfunded pension liability that you're not thinking sustainably on a fiscal basis. I would like to see that added. Thank you.
Thank you. Carlisle Ann Young, followed by Anna Miramontes.
Carlisle Ann Young, Moss Beach. You guys do have my handout, so if you want to look at it, I'm going to try to abbreviate it. I didn't know I only had 2 minutes. Hopefully they'll, I see they're going to allow 51% for locals. Maybe they'll do more if what she said, I'm sorry, I forgot her name. There's always a bigger demand than what they propose. I would like to see more green features. I realize that it said there's a lot of pervious surfaces in this project, and I would like to see that reduced, at least by having the parking lots be made pervious so that they can recharge the water. We are, our community paid for that water system. We're still paying for it on our property tax bill, so if they're going to be using our water for 71 units and 160 residents or whatever it is, it'd be nice if they recharged the water by having no runoff go off into the marine reserve. Additionally, I think you have inadequate parking, especially if you're going to have 37 2-bedrooms and 18 3-bedrooms, and for a family of 4. That's not going to be a 2-car family. Most of those people, especially if they have a teenager, will have more than that. So I would like to see you look at that parking a lot more. But the main thing I'm really concerned about is the evacuation plan. I went to the Mid-Coast Community Council meeting on the 8th of this month. And Mr. Joe LeClaire was there from the county. And he was talking about the Connect the Coastside Executive Summary, which hadn't come out yet, but it has since been posted. There is no emergency evacuation plan for the coast side. And he said he thought maybe OES was doing it, and he also said he thought CAL FIRE was doing it. Well, they weren't. There is one fellow from CAL FIRE who is working on it, and he hopes to have it in place by fire season. But when I called OES, they said one guy is working on it with a lady from the Mid-Coast Community Council. If you're going to put resources, I'm trying to. You're going to put resources towards that sort of thing. We are in a really big fire area, okay? So I hope that for the sake of the existing residents, that you will consider an evacuation plan like the people from Paradise so we can get out.
Thank you. Please move quickly.
I'm not seeing Anna Miramontes, so up next will be Harold Herman, followed by Karen DeMoore.
So good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Harold Herman. I'm a resident of Moss Beach, and I want to share a couple of concerns. I observed during the last year a couple of things that really popped up. And for full disclosure, I must say I have a background in insurance. So neighbors reported that they experienced significant rate hikes in their homeowner insurance policy. In some cases, insurance was canceled after 25 years. The topic was also raised on Nextdoor. So I started looking at it. What I found is interesting. So cancellations, insurers dropped hundreds of thousands of California homeowner insurance in high fire risk areas. Pretty broadly reported, triggered by the devastating wildfire seasons. Loss ratios. For every dollar they collected in premium from Californians during 2018, they paid on average $1.70 in claims. Well, that's not sustainable. The majority of the 15 largest insurance companies lost money in 2018 on homeowner insurance. At the same time, these insurers are facing rate hikes by themselves from their own carriers, known as reinsurers. That puts further pressure on them to reduce the amount of coverage they sell in fire zones. The insurance are looking at their book of business to try to reduce their risk with a special target on areas that classify as high fire risk, but many other factors, of course, contribute to that, like proximity to fire station, fire hydrants, clearance around the problem. But what makes insurers uneasy are also other factors. So in 2018, there's a revised fire hazard map for the San Mateo coast side and other areas. And that shows Moss Beach, Montero, and many areas on the coast side actually has extreme high fire danger. That's the highest risk rating you can have. In addition, evacuation routes. The coast side makes a list of towns that will be difficult to evacuate. So that was published by Streetlight Data. Was pretty broadly covered by the press, and basically you see the parallels with Paradise City. Paradise City had 5 roads going in the city and out. They had a closed 4, so it left 1. We have just 1 here. Which brings me to the last point on water. So we have 240,000 gallons water reserved for fighting fires in the district, Montero Water District. That compares to the neighbor districts with 4 million. So it's not an apple-to-apple comparison. The district is 3 times larger. But why do we have 1/16 of the water reserved for fighting fires? So that puts a huge risk on us. That's about our safety, and especially as insurers are looking at us to keep insurance going for the coast side. Thank you very much.
So next, Karen DeMoore, followed by Dolores Silva, followed by J.Q. Oswine.
Hi, my name is Karen DeMoore. I'm a resident of Moss Beach. I'm also a board member of Resist Density. We support the promotion of sensible planning for the San Mateo County Mid-Coast. I want to thank you all for coming over the hill so that you allow the community to voice their concerns. I would like to first begin by addressing the overall issue of affordable housing. There's a crisis in the Bay Area, there's a crisis on the coast as well, and we need to find sustainable local solutions that can actually be supported by our current infrastructure. We also need to ensure that any housing project is 100% reserved for locals who work on the coast, not 50% as Mid-Penn is presenting. This proposed project is just too big. The coast in general and the Mid-Coast specifically is unique from any other place in the Bay Area. We just have one road in, through, and out. There are no alternate routes. Half Moon Bay's LCP estimates the coast has 3 million visitors a year. Any given day, we have serious traffic congestion and the highway shutdowns due to accidents, and now we're going to have PG&E power shutdowns that has the community rattled. When this property was zoned for 148 units, there was an expectation that we would have the infrastructure to support it. There was to be a multi-lane highway over the mountain, for example. But when the county voters chose the much smaller 2-lane tunnel instead, this permanently constrained the road system. So large-scale developments like this one should have been reassessed to better reflect realities. On the surface, a decrease in zoning to 71 units seems a logical reduction, but it still does not adequately consider all the current circumstances of our limited infrastructure. For example, Mid-Penn's own traffic studies point to numerous significant and unavoidable impacts if this project at its current size is built. This project being proposed is 7 miles up the highway from here, It is isolated. We couldn't even hold this meeting in Moss Beach if we wanted to. It lacks amenities. There is limited walkability and inadequate public transportation. There's a lack of access to groceries, jobs, schools, doctors, and community-oriented services. This will make residents dependent on their cars, which is a financial burden on affordable housing residents. Plus, it goes against all the goals of affordable housing to limit VMT. We urge you to consider this tonight, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dolores Silva.
Welcome to the Coast. My name is Dolores Silva. I'm a board member of Business Density and a 30-year resident of Moss Beach. I'd like to follow on Karen's comments. We have invested significant research in order to inform our positions, and our purpose is to provide an overview of the larger picture, considering what it means to our environment, our infrastructure, and by taking a close look at existing conditions. We have reported our findings and evaluated proposals in that context, existing conditions. Reducing the density allowed from 148 units to 71 is a false baseline from which to evaluate this proposal. And we can demonstrate that by looking at the following pieces of our infrastructure. Traffic, it just adds too much. Mid-Penn's own traffic analysis identified several difficult to solve problems with the increase of both vehicle and pedestrian traffic in Moss Beach. Significant and unavoidable are the terms because they actually are increasing delays at intersections or because they increase safety hazards on the highway to both cross traffic and new traffic run on by these 71 units. We have a map to demonstrate what and where, and you have that in your package. Sewer, Mid-Penn points to the LCP and the priority allowed for affordable housing regarding sewer capacity. However, our sewer infrastructure is very outdated over much of the mid-coast, as is the sewage treatment system. Adding 71 connections all at once in one place has never been done. We believe it to be a risk with an associated cost that is difficult to scope. Resist Density also has a complete study on the sewer system that is available for you to review. Cumulative impacts on development. Well, there's another handout in your packet on that. There's a long list of large development projects in process or in the proposal stage. Impacts of all of these must be considered in assessing the capabilities of the existing infrastructure, not just one at a time. A look at the big picture is essential to evaluate the investment that will be needed to support these ventures. We have a map overview also in your package, along with a list of all these projects. There are other ones.
You need to wrap up, please.
And the point is that this innocent-sounding reduction in density needs to be evaluated as what it is. 71 new housing units in an isolated location with an aged infrastructure and a risk to the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
JQ, followed by Marcia U. Yeats.
Hi, my name is J.Q. Oswine. I am a resident of Moss Beach and a local historian. I reviewed Mid-Penn's application and have noted several concerns with regard to the suitability of the Fairlawn Heights site for a 71-unit housing project. I use the historical term Fairlawn Heights for this site. As background, I submit the report History and Environment of Fairlawn Heights, which you have in your packet. This site was a former World War II military installation, yet there's no record that it was ever previously assessed for environmental contamination. The site's military history, as well as its essential abandonment in 1969, forewarned the possibility of hazardous materials still being present. Assessments for hazardous materials performed by Mid-Penn's consultants were limited by Mid-Penn's agreed-upon scope of services and did not fully account for potential contaminants throughout the site. Despite the limited scope, the application reports recommended no further investigation or remedial action for hazardous materials. It's possible that hazardous materials could be present in specific areas of the site that were not adequately tested. Soil samples should be obtained from adequate depths around the entire site in all areas where the soil will be disturbed by digging, grading, or where runoff could affect other areas that are undisturbed directly. The site's critical position above the Montero Creek riparian corridor and its recent designation as a landslide zone with a steep north bank being subject to liquefaction underscores the need for a more thorough assessment of these environmental impacts. Mid-Penn's Hydro Modification Management Report which was not included in the PC staff report, also indicates that the project runoff will flow into Montero Creek, which is an environmentally sensitive habitat area. It's especially noteworthy that Mid-Penn's consultants did not observe the presence of asbestos during site reconnaissance. Considering that the remaining building foundations are littered with building materials and that almost all building materials used in the 1930s through the 1970s contained asbestos, it's almost certain that asbestos is still present on the site. There is a record of asbestos abatement by MWSD around their water tanks on the southeast side of the site and a subsequent report of asbestos in their other areas of the premises, but no cleanup has ever been done. So, in fact, the word asbestos only appears twice and in one sentence in the entire 740-page staff report being considered today. Thorough testing and appropriate remediation prior to development are imperative to protect the existing community as well as to ensure the safety of potential Cypress Point residents. Since this project site is a formerly used offense site, involvement by the California Department of Toxic Substances Control in the testing remediation plan should be considered. In any case, this application for a zoning change should not be considered without a full and complete environmental impact report. Thank you.
Marcia Yoon Geets, followed by Caitlin Chang.
Hi, my name is Marcia Yates. I'm a resident of Moss Beach. We would like to change the LCP, including the PUD, in order to fit this Mid-Penn housing development. I'm not against affordable housing. I'm against cheating in order to get what the developer needs. I am for sustainable development, which follows the prescribed requirements, which includes honest and in-depth examination of water supply, traffic mitigation, all sewage issues, and a current EIR. Scott Wiener's SB 50 is a bill which has been amended with regard to affordable housing being developed in remote locations. He wanted to decrease VMT, so we wanted to have affordable housing closer to transit hubs, closer to job centers and services. And the Mid-Penn development does not include any of that. It's not near a transit hub, it's not near any services, and definitely, I don't know where they find 1,400 jobs in Moss Beach, in Montara, but they found them. Mid-Penn development is not near any of the affordable services. And affordable housing, we have to remember, is not just about rent or cost of your home. It's a cost, it includes cost of gas, insurance, cars, and getting to where you have to go in order to have everyday living things happen. The traffic and also the traffic planning issue has been vague at best. Who is going to pay for the traffic lights, the roundabouts, and the road repair after moving 7,000 cubic feet of dirt? It seems to me there is a lot of privatizing profits and socializing the expense. I frankly do not want to bear the water, sewage, traffic mitigation, and road repair expenses for a project that is not appropriate for this location. You need to research deeper into the true feasibility of this project and keep the process open and honest at all times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Caitlin Chang, followed by Lynn Chouette, followed by Joaquin Jimenez.
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I'm the Housing Development Specialist at Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse, where we help all that are fleeing domestic violence and abusive relationships. So I want you to imagine this, that someone very close to you is in an abusive relationship where they fear, that every day could be their last. They are in trauma because their intimate partner has betrayed them by taking away their sense of safety. They are trying to muster up the courage to flee, but it is not as easy as it may seem. They may not have any source of financial income. The person who has caused them harm may have damaged their credit history, and they may have prevented them from working, and so forth. But a big factor that determines whether a survivor can flee is the ability to have a safe and affordable place to go. Take a look around the room and picture this. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced severe intimate partner abuse. Of these individuals affected by domestic violence, 38% will become homeless at some point in their lives, and between 22 and 57% of all homeless women have reported that domestic violence was the immediate cause of their homelessness. When a survivor is deciding whether to flee or to stay, they sometimes have to choose between becoming homeless or staying in an unsafe environment. When survivors build up the courage to flee, they come to Cora, where we help them with a wide range of free services to help them on their journey of healing and their path toward safety. Many clients are referred to our housing department, where we provide rental assistance. In my work with survivors, I recruit and work with landlords who go above and beyond to remove the social and economic barriers survivors face when looking to find a place to live on their own. Our dedicated landlords understand that our clients might not have a credit score of 650 and up, and they understand that most of our clients do not make 3 times the amount of rent required by most Bay Area property owners and management companies. These requirements are not feasible to our survivors, many of whom have no income to draw upon once they leave the person who harmed them. Affordable housing is not a want, it is a need. Survivors of domestic violence should not have to worry about becoming homeless once they leave the person that harmed them, and people who are considered low income should not have to pack their bags and endure an insane commute just to continue working in one of the most economically thriving areas in the country. I encourage you to consider this proposal, and thank you for your time.
Lynn Chouette, followed by Joaquin Jimenez, followed by Alex Melendres.
Hello, my name is Lynn Schutte, and I'm a 25-year Lindemar resident. Thank you for coming to this side of the county. It's hard for us to get on to the other side sometimes. I would like to address this issue because I'm for this proposal and for very personal reasons. I have a brother who lives in mid-pen housing on the peninsula. He is developmentally delayed, and I told him that I would be coming to this proceeding tonight, and I told him, Charlie, what would you say to the people who are considering this proposal? Because some of them don't know your story. They don't know about developmentally delayed people and what their needs are. And he said, I want you to tell them this is a great benefit to me. And I enjoy living on my own. I make my own decisions. I'm in charge of everything. He said, including laundry and housekeeping. My brother, 52 years old, talking about laundry and housekeeping being a benefit. But if you think about it, that's a sign of freedom. That's so emblematic of so many other things that he couldn't possibly tell you about. But what he can tell you is that he feels happier because he's at Mid-Pen. He's been in other living situations before. Mid-Pen for him has been a godsend. And he said they charge according to what kind of money I make, so they look at his salary and what he makes. He's a bagger at a grocery store. If my plumbing needs to be fixed, they send somebody to fix it. If there's any kind of repair, they fix it. To the community room part, I want to speak to that. I see that's included here in this proposal. My brother has really fond feelings about the community room at his Mid-Pen housing. And I want you to picture the smiling faces of all these young people, 52 years old, who are enjoying the community rooms, enjoying fellowship, enjoying each other in a way that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. Thank you, Mid-Pen.
Next is Joaquin Jimenez, followed by Alex Melendres, followed by Catherine Murdoch.
Good evening. I'm here to support this proposal, but I would actually like to propose 2 different locations in Half Moon Bay. I heard the reports from the community of Mouse Beach and Montera about the consequences of building affordable housing in that area. So I would like to propose a location at the bottom of the high school, the area between Lewis Foster Drive and Highway 1 at the corner. That location is access to the high school shopping center. Traffic would be less of a problem having affordable housing in that area. The other location we'd like to propose is a location on Highway 92 that is just west of Spanish Town and just east of Hilltop Mobile Home. These 2 locations is easy access for community, one drive, maybe cycling to school, walking to school, to the health centers, shopping centers. So we would like to propose these two locations for Mid-Penn to look into these, these two areas as a better option to Moss Beach. Also a proposition about, not forgetting about our community that we have south of Half Moon Bay, which is Pescadero, which is in a great need also of affordable housing. There was a report done in 2017, I believe, by the Mercury News about the need of affordable housing in Pescadero for our farm worker community. So please take a look at these new locations that we have here in Half Moon Bay. I think it's a better for our community, for the environment.
Please, no clapping, no demonstrations.
Next, we have Alex Melendres, followed by Catherine Murdoch, followed by David Lynn.
Hello, San Mateo County Planning Commission. My name is Alex Melendres, and I'm representing the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County, or HLC. We're a nonprofit that is dedicated to working with communities and their leaders to produce and preserve quality affordable homes. I'm here in support of the 71 homes in Moss Beach. There's currently a huge lack in deed-restricted affordable housing in the entire county, but this is especially true in the mid-coast, where there is none. We're seeing overcrowding, we're seeing stressful rents, we're seeing a lack of options, and we get these people coming to us all the time and asking us, where is an affordable place to live? And the industries on the coast, hotels, farms, tourism, etc., thrive in a low-income workforce without many affordable places to live. But you can help change that with the option and the solution in front of you. These 71 affordable homes can provide a safe and quality space for the most vulnerable citizens and allow them to have privacy and dignity. Those who need affordable homes the most don't always have the luxury to be here in person or to be here in front of the podium or even have the courage to speak sometimes. It's pretty terrifying, to be honest. The person working two jobs, the person watching their kids, the person who's exhausting, this is fairly evident from the number of emails and support that many of you guys have received prior to this meeting. People needed these homes yesterday, people need them now, and we respectfully ask the County Planning Commission to move these affordable homes forward without delay. We appreciate your leadership with these urgently needed homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Catherine Murdoch, followed by David Lynn, followed by Patricia Lynn.
Catherine Murdoch. I live in Half Moon Bay. This really affects all of the coast side, not just Moss Beach. I have everything all planned, but I've heard a lot and I've had to change my comments. One, affordable housing, I'd like to know what criteria they're using for affordable housing. Because what I've seen is that it would cut out all really low-income seniors, all disabled, and those without a car. Because they say that the subject site is within walking distance. For whom? Not everybody. That would just mean you have to have a car in order to live there. Because what they call a commercial district, I hope you're familiar with it, it's not much. The only groceries are expensive. There's no Safeway down there. There's no not even a New Leaf. They have to use a car or public transport. They say they're working for public transport. Well, I can tell you that's pie in the sky. I'm very active in transportation. And if you were disabled or qualified to use the shuttles, well, you'd have to plan very, very carefully. You can't just call up and get it. You have to go a day ahead. Okay. I'm quite familiar with the sites that they showed, and they were very lovely. Nice video. Except the reality doesn't quite mesh. Their outreach is not very transparent. If it were just for teachers, I'd say go ahead and do it tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have David Lynn, followed by Patricia Lynn, followed by Richard Klein.
Good evening. My name is David Lynn. My family and I have been in Montero for quite some time. Montero and Moss Beach are rural, low-density, and remote communities. I'm actually in favor of affordable housing, but in the right location. I'm against this proposed development. It's inappropriate for the area in terms of density and the negative impacts it's likely to cause in terms of increased traffic, environmental impacts, the built environment, and public safety. Low-income residents deserve good social infrastructure. That means nearby shopping, efficient mass transit, childcare, nearby schools, and most of all, plentiful, well-paying jobs. This location offers none of these. There are a number of problems with the proposed development. First, it is out of scale with the surrounding single-family housing density and character. And thrusting over 200 people in this site sets a precedent. This precedent would invite potentially more high-density housing that, again, is ill-suited for the area. Carlos Street is very narrow, and essentially a one-lane and dangerous road as it curves several times with many blind turns, including, and most dangerously, the intersection to high-volume, high-speed Highway 1. I've driven on this road, and it's quite dangerous, even with the current traffic volume. The road system, the sewer system, the water capacity are all inadequate currently and would be stretched to the breaking point with over 200 new residents. The proposed development would be much more appropriate in the urban Bay Area, not the isolated rural coast. I also know there's an excellent low-income housing program called Section 8 housing vouchers. Under Section 8, tenants are free to locate almost anywhere they choose. This program is viable and funded. It will be an excellent solution to offer the potential tenants of this development. They can locate near high-quality jobs, closer schools, better public transportation, and better social services. In summary, I'm strongly against the proposed development, but certainly for low-income housing. If this process continues, I'd recommend a full IR to be conducted. Thank you.
Patricia Lynn, followed by Richard Klein, followed by Richard Gates.
My name is Patricia Lynn, and I'm a long-term resident of Montero. Campfire, Paradise, November 2018, 135,000 acres burned, 42 deaths. Top Fire, Sonoma, October 2017, 37,000 acres burned, 22 deaths. Tunnel Fire, Oakland and Berkeley Hills, 1991, 1,600 acres burned, 25 deaths. Tohoku, Japan, earthquake and tsunami, March 2011. Seawater surge 6 miles inland and up to 128 feet. 16,000 deaths, 2,500 still missing to today. What do these have in common with this Mid-Penn development? Remote and lack of adequate evacuation access. One-lane Highway 1 and narrow neighborhood streets. Proximity of the site to Montero Creek on 16th Street. A major earthquake and tsunami can happen any day. With a high-density development such as the one proposed, will add hundreds of people. We could all be trapped in a major fire or tsunami. I can't look at the kids on the streets or in my neighborhood to tell them that we can't help them. We can't protect them. Meteor Place, Mid-Penn's high-density development in rural American Canyon in Napa County in 2009, within the first 18 months of its opening. Police responded to the development 250 times for the problem related to assault and burglary. That number is more than half of the entire town for this one development, according to the police report. Building high density without infrastructure, roads, jobs is a recipe for disaster for everyone, especially for the residents Mid-Penn is trying to put there.
I need you to wrap up.
I and my fellow neighbors are strongly against this development. Please consider stopping this ill-conceived, out-of-scale project entirely. Thank you.
Next we have Richard Klein, followed by Richard Gates, followed by Ken Church.
Hi, my name is Richard Klein. I'm a resident of El Granada, and I'd like to speak today in favor of the proposed affordable housing development on the coast side. The number one crisis affecting California and the Bay Area right now is affordable housing. Since I retired a couple of years ago, I've been studying at the community college in San Francisco State. This has been a great experience, but the level of pessimism and stress I see in my fellow students is overwhelming. They face the usual social and academic stresses we're all familiar with, but the overwhelming stress is financial. How do I pay the rent? How do I help my family get by? Once I graduate, is there any possibility I'll be able to get started on a career here at home? Or must I migrate to Texas or Oregon? We owe it to our young people, our kids and grandkids, our neighbors across the street and across the hill, to create diverse housing options for everyone, everywhere, so we don't shut the door on the California dream for the next generations. I understand and respect my coastside neighbors' concerns, but the perfect site for affordable housing will never be found. We need to move forward on this opportunity to stem the tide of impoverishment and exclusion created by our severe housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Gates, followed by Ken Church, followed by Jenny Scoble.
Yes, Richard Gates. I reside in Moss Beach. Yes, maybe the perfect site for affordable housing doesn't exist. I don't know. But it certainly is not this location. It is very rural. It is isolated. There's no family-priced shopping. You cannot shop at that store. It's a liquor store. And, you know, any family of four that tried to shop there, their weekly budget would be exhausted in 2 days. The infrastructure, the isolation, I don't know, with the exception maybe of Ketchum, anybody who's been to this site, traveled on Carlos Street. You imagine the addition of 200 cars, and then 200 cars coming down and trying to get onto Highway 1. Joaquin, I believe was his name. I didn't catch his last name.
Jimenez.
Jimenez.
Thank you. Because I am totally for affordable housing. You see this on the ballot each time. I vote for it. How can you not? The problem is putting it in the wrong place. And Joaquin's suggestion is excellent. There's walkability, there's shopping, churches, schools. None of that exists. And the final thing, I had much to say, but so much has been discussed already, is evacuation. There is only one road. Only one road. We're trapped. The idea of adding 200 additional cars is unconscionable. It is in the wrong place.
Thank you.
Ken Church, followed by Jenny Scoble, followed by Ann Rothman.
Good evening. As many have said, thank you for coming over. It's good to have you on this side. My name is Ken Church. I live in Moss Beach. I've lived on the coast side for half a century. I'm old, and I promise I'll be under my 2 minutes. You know, this land would have been built upon 40 years ago. You remember when there was a housing ban on the coast side, and you remember the only way you could build a house is if you drilled your own well. Like I said, this land would have been built upon 40 years ago. The two things that stopped it was lack of water and lack of sewer. It's a rhetorical question. Please consider what's changed. What's changed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Jenny Scoble. I live in Half Moon Bay. As you know, there's a housing crisis all over the Bay Area, and Half Moon Bay is not an exception to that. You walk down Main Street on any given day, there are signs in the windows of every business. Everybody's looking for help. I'm board chair of an organization that runs 2 preschools and provides after-school services for school-age children. They have an incredibly hard time getting and maintaining staff because of the cost of living here. And that, you know, it's the same for people, anyone who can afford $1.5 million to $2 million, which is kind of the opening price for homes in Half Moon Bay. The opponents to this say that they're for affordable housing, just so long as it's not near them. The reality is every community in the Bay Area needs to build housing. We're no exception here. And all of our homes and all of our cars strain this environment. That is not, you know, a reason to keep it exclusively for ourselves. For any healthy community to sustain, we need to have all kinds of people here, not just people who can afford $2 million for a house, because the people who live in those houses don't teach their children, they don't fix toilets, they don't pick vegetables, and do all the other things that people in a diverse community do. So thank you for considering it, and I hope that you will view it favorably.
Thank you.
Ann Rothman, followed by Evan Adams.
I am here today. I gave a packet out to everyone, so I hope you get a chance to read it and look at it closely. I am actually asking you not to approve the LCP changes at this time, because I think this is worthy of development at some point, but there is no infrastructure put into place now to put it here. There is a better location in the mid-coast, El Granada, property owned by the Cabrillo School District. Perhaps they would like to sell it. It is within walking distance. You have the multimodal trail being currently funded and started to be built there. They have traffic lights and the majority of jobs. I would like to see Mid-Penn take that property and build it right there. Moss Beach doesn't have a single traffic light. More importantly, the only proposed changes in traffic is to go one way down Carlos Street. What no one has mentioned here is we have a firehouse at the corner of Kelmore and Stetson, which is within eyesight and walking distance of this development up in the community. The problem is that as everyone from the development is now going to be driving through Kelmore and Stetson streets, how is the fire truck supposed to get out and respond to people? This is a picture of what trash day looks like here on Kelmore Street. Feel free to pass it along. It is impassable. You cannot get 2 cars down the street at any given time, let alone a fire truck. This is a hazard waiting to happen. All I'm asking for is to please get the county to give us the infrastructure and the need and the improvements in our roadways first before building here. Consider building in other locations that are more suitable at this time, like El Granada. You have residents who are in support of it in El Granada. Please consider placing it there first. The LOS, they said that you should not have more than a D to be considered okay. The area of California Avenue and Highway 1 is an F if you put this in, and at Cypress Avenue and Highway 1 is an F. That's the traffic conditions that will be caused by this development. It's here in the Connecticut side. Please take a look at it. It is something that you should consider.
Thank you.
Evan Adams, followed by Jordan Grimes, followed by Tim Frank.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Evan Adams. I'm from Foster City, over the hill. What I'm saying today is purely my own opinion, not representative of any boards or commissions I might be a member of. Foster City happens to have 3 ways in and out, and 30,000 people. This project can easily be accommodated in the access that you have. It's an important project for the suggested land use. We all need to be doing our part for affordable housing everywhere in San Mateo County. I'm in part of San Mateo County. We're all in this boat together. In my day job, I work as an architectural rep and as a run a flooring contracting business. What we do is we do school gymnasiums. My competition for these gymnasiums is now coming from places like New Mexico, Texas, Utah, Bakersfield, Los Angeles. Why? Because it's cheaper for them to drive here and do the work than to live here. 15%. That's how much the median income in San Mateo County has gone up from 2018 to 2019. That's not because we somehow raised our incomes. It's because the middle class has been hollowed out, and these people are leaving our communities. I need workers, I need people to help work in our county, and we need to stop importing people from out of state to do this work. The only way I do that is with apprentices. Apprentices make about the right amount of money to live in a place like this, and then they become journeymen, and then they become productive members of our trades, and we move forward and we improve the costs of our schools and our buildings, and all of our lives improve because our cost of living drops. Please support this land use. It's well needed and fits perfectly within the use. Thank you.
Jordan Grimes, followed by Tim Frank, followed by Dennis Sharps. Thanks. So, not seeing Jordan, Tim Frank.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. My name is Tim Frank, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Neighborhoods. But this evening, I'm also speaking on behalf of the members of the California Rural Smart Growth Working Group, and you actually have a letter from us that we sent a few months ago. And that includes groups like the California Coalition for Rural Housing, the Leadership Council for Accountability and Justice, and Self-Help Enterprise, which is Habitat for Humanity style housing for farm workers. We work on rural housing questions, and we've been active in making sure resources are available to build affordable housing in rural areas because it's really important. And if you look at this area, it's especially important because this is an area that is for low-income workers, in effect, actually a job center. The jobs housing balance may be different from the baseline, but if you look at the jobs housing fit, is what the metric that actually looks at the level of income. This is a job center. That's why locating housing here is actually a way to reduce VMT if it's affordable. So if you actually look at what you're being asked to do with the LCP, it is to reduce the number of market rate housing. Now those are the homes that would have housed people that commute over the hill to the Bayside for jobs, and to increase the number of affordable homes, which is the homes that are actually provided mostly for people that will live here locally. So it's actually a tremendous benefit in terms of reducing VMT and regional traffic, and that's something that's really important. The other thing I want to note is that this is a great place to build housing for the actual residents. We've heard a lot about how terrible it will be, but in fact, if you look at the neighborhood, a lot of the reason why people are here and protesting is because it is such a nice place. You know, the fact that people are willing to spend $2 million on a home in the neighborhood suggests that it's a nice place. And a lot of social science research suggests that giving low-income people an opportunity to live in a neighborhood like this is a tremendous benefit for them. It allows for extreme social mobility and opportunity to graduate to the middle class and give their kids a better life. So thank you.
Dennis, followed by Chris Johnson.
My name's Ed Shamsis. I actually own on 16th Street. Oh, sorry about that. I live on 16th Street. My name's Ed Shamsis. I actually have 2 homes on 16th Street, so I pretty much own that whole block. And my concern is that about 3 years ago, we had a fire on the coast with lightning strikes, and I almost lost everything, including my life and my wife's. Why? The fire department could not handle what was happening. We called 911, and this blaze was 40 feet from my house on Mid-Penn's property, as a matter of fact. And 911 said, "Is your house on fire now?" I go, "Excuse me?" They go, "Well, call us back when it's on fire. We can't handle it." How in the world can we possibly put 71 homes when they couldn't even handle me back then? And I have 9 horses, we have animals. It was fearful and devastating. If there's a fire on the coast, it's terrible. One of the houses I just bought, I tried to get fire insurance. The premiums went up 300%. I have flood insurance. I have the creek over there. That went up from $1,000 to $5,000. These are huge expenses. Okay? And it's a major problem because it's a tough area. And to go ahead, if people walk that property, they talk about medium density. I have an agricultural property. If you look right around Mid-Penn, on the north side, they don't talk about that. It's all agricultural property. The canyon, it's unbelievable. It's just waiting to be torched. That's my biggest fear. If someone starts a barbecue, puts a cigarette, you walk back there, it is incredibly, incredibly scary. This is what I'm worried about. To have another 200 people come in, it could be so dangerous. I don't want it to have the fire department. I'm talking about expanding it. It's really a serious problem. The other thing I raised last time also is that we rescue Mustangs. This property is a buddy mine, which is fine, but I'm worried about children coming across onto the property. How do you keep them out? Children love horses. These are wild horses that we let run across our property. It's a major concern. We're going to put in just a place for children right next to a property like this. There's got to be some kind of no-climb fence. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Chris Johnson, followed by Kelsey Baines, followed by Joanne Rakuski.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out to the coast side. Really appreciate that. I'm sure the community does as well. My name is Chris Johnson. I'm a member of the Coastside Design Review Committee. I'm not speaking as a member of that committee, but I was also former chair of the MCC and was chair of the MCC when this project was first initiated. So I have worked with Felix R. Young and Jan Leventhal. I'm very aware of this project, and so I've always had some concerns about this project, and we've heard those concerns already today. Infrastructure, legitimate environmental concerns with the hazards that might be there, and location. And I second what other people have said, and I really wish that Joaquin's suggestion of a different location that is set with the supporting resources that would really make this successful would be considered. But the thing that I could maybe get past those concerns. But the concern that has always stuck with me was this promotion that it would alleviate the housing shortage here on the coast side and help with the work-live situation. And so I've patiently waited to see what the numbers were going to be that. And I'm extremely, extremely disappointed that only 51% are going to be preference for live work, which I would also ask, is preference the same as a guarantee? I heard tonight that Mid-Penn requested 51%, and I guess the question I have is why did they not request 100%? If this was 100% live work, that overcomes the other concerns that I have. I just wanted to also say one other thing, that being very familiar with this project from its inception, I have never heard a person say that they are against affordable housing, and I want to believe that. And I feel that way too, and I'm so happy that this is now at 100% affordable. I just really, I don't think that, and unless you have 100% preference or guarantee for live work, I would ask, is the benefit of providing affordable housing for people who are still going to be using a lot of their resources to maybe go back and forth in the commute or to buy expensive groceries at the one store there, does that balance out, the financial side of it? I'm not sure in terms of the live work and the preference. I would need this to be much higher of a percentage. 51, I don't understand that. And again, thank you for coming out here.
Kelsey Baines, followed by Joanne Rukuski, followed by Mario Rendon. Good evening, my name is Kelsey Baines. I am representing Peninsula for Everyone, which is a pro-housing group of neighbors for more neighbors at all income levels. The urgency of our dire housing need is extremely personal to me, as I have heard hundreds of stories from many people throughout the region who are desperate for homes in this area. Before I quit my job last year to be able to come to meetings like this, I was a psychologist providing supportive services to homeless and formerly homeless veterans in San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. And the veterans that I previously served routinely expressed to me a desire for homes and opportunity in San Mateo County. And it was extremely frustrating within that role to have to repeatedly break the reality to veterans that getting an affordable home in San Mateo County is like winning the lottery. And that even with a housing choice voucher, they probably won't be able to find an affordable place to rent. And so I'm just trying to express to you that, I think we all agree as a community, I've heard even the opponents of this project agree that we have a need for affordable housing. And I want to acknowledge the emotion of people saying this is not the right place. A lot of the concerns that I'm hearing are about disaster, and I do think the county needs to do more to prepare for disaster. But this project is not going to make or break our disaster response, which is something that we need to work on regardless. And what I would encourage you to think about is the urgency of this. We really need action. What I was struck by in the presentation was this has been something that has been debated for years now. And those are years that people haven't had beds. So let's get some action and move this project forward. Thank you. Joanne Rukuski, followed by Mario Rendon, followed by Paul Passenger.
I'm gonna lose this thing. Hold it, that's bad, I can do that. My name's Joanne Ricassi, and I'm joined by Mary Ellis Pierce in the audience. We come together both as concerned coastside residents and also as representatives of a group, the Immigrant Advocacy Group, or IAG, which is a group of volunteers who formed in order to partner with our immigrant neighbors. In this role, the IAG frequently receives requests to help specific immigrant families who are struggling, desperately struggling, with finding housing or being able to pay for it. So generous members of our group have often provided financial assistance or offered their own homes as short-term housing. But the challenges keep coming. Affordable housing just is not here. So we recognize that our assistance to people is just a short-term fix. It's not part of a long-term solution. For the long term, we have to build more options for affordable and low-income housing on the coast side, many more options. The Mid-Penn Cypress Point development is just one such option, and we stand in support.
Mario Rendon, followed by Paul Passenger, followed by Matt Allen.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mario Rendon, and I'm the District Director for State Assembly Member Kevin Mullen.
Mr. Mullen did send a letter, so I'm not going to read the letter or read it, what's already stated in there, other than he is in support of this project. I will take off my official hat and speak to you as a Coastside resident. I live here in Half Moon Bay. I live in the Cypress Cove community, which is townhomes, 128 units near downtown. And I think for me, the housing issue is very personal in the sense that, as other speakers have specifically stated, we've had a housing crisis in San Mateo County, and it's not recent. This goes back decades. And what I mean by decades is starting in the late 1980s and moving forward, housing affordability has been an issue for all income levels in the community. And if you recall, during the dot-com boom, rentals were scarce. We were affected by that. My roommates and I got married, and my wife was an entry-level elementary school teacher. I was working for the county. We couldn't afford to buy here, and so we moved out of the area. So I won't repeat everything that we went through, but in the sense that we need housing, period. And a lot of what we've heard this evening, I will say that I have heard for over 25 years, and in all parts of San Mateo County, in every community. And so I think the Planning Commission of Half Moon Bay, back in 1990 or in the late 80s, that approved a high-density development in what I'm sure was a very unpopular decision, and the city council who then supported that Planning Commission, because those 128 units are housing a lot of people like me that were entry-level at the time, and now are very expensive units, and we were thankfully able to get into one. So please have the courage to do what's right, not just for the Coastside community, but for the broader San Mateo County community. Thank you.
Paul Fassinger, followed by Matt Allen, followed by Teresa McLaughlin.
Good evening. My name's Paul Fassinger. I live in El Granada. My family and I have lived here for 30 years, so I have a pretty good idea of how things work on the coast. I wanted to address a couple of points that people were bringing up. By the way, I'm in favor of this proposal. I'm in favor of more affordable housing here on the coast, in San Mateo, in the Bay Area. It's a crisis and we need a lot more. When people were talking about this affordable housing project and the issue of having it near jobs or not having people driving and reducing DOT, people don't really talk about the mid-coast, which is El Granada all the way north. They're talking about Moss Beach or Montara. But if you look at the mid-coast, it's not just a couple of stores. Seton Coastside Hospital, Farallon Elementary, El Granada Elementary, the Sheriff's Station, the harbor, which is not just the harbor, but all the stores, the hotels, all the businesses there. It's not surprising to me at all that there's 1,400 jobs on the mid-coast. And these are the sort of jobs where you're going to find people that need more affordable housing. You're citing housing near jobs where people are going to need that kind of housing. It's a good match. The other thing I think that's important to realize is, while people bring up a lot of other issues, the most difficult thing for affordable housing, I think, is delaying projects. Here you have a viable project that has gone through this process for years. Now people want to talk about, here's a great site, let's start from scratch. They want to talk about, if we have to improve all of the infrastructure, get a comprehensive solution to all this before we do anything about affordable housing. Delays, and that's probably the most difficult thing, to get affordable housing built in the Bay Area, in California. Thank you. Again, I support this proposal.
Next we have Matt Allen, followed by Teresa McLaughlin, followed by Deb McKinney.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I lost my voice, so that's my explanation. I teach high school, and I've been living in El Granada since 1974, 45-year El Granada resident. two things I think you should get concrete answers to before you move forward with asking the Coastal Commission to certify the amendment to the zoning. One of the biggest impacts is traffic. I've been reading over the proposal. It says that the project should not detrimentally affect the quality of life of the community. Increasing traffic will detrimentally affect the quality of life for the community. So there's two things that are left ambiguous in the proposal regarding traffic mitigation. One is the Connect the Coast side, still gathering information and possible solutions to mitigate traffic. Also, public transportation discussions with Samtrans, possibly others. There's no answer until you can tell us definitely what's in place to deal with that. Do not amend the zoning. Also, it's been voiced several times that this project was approved in 1980. I don't think that's a reason to go through with it today. Population was about half then what it is now. The impact is completely different. I think it needs to be assessed. What I brought up earlier, the traffic. Also, we know who the applicant is at Peninsula. We know who the neighbors are. Who are the stakeholders? I think we need to know who that group is or who the individuals are who are also working on this project. They're named as stakeholders, but as a resident of this community, I want to know who they are. One last question. It's been discussed that teachers would benefit with this affordable housing, but what happens if those teachers lose their jobs, or people who were given access to these homes because they work on the coast side, if they lose that job, what's the policy for evicting them? You could address those questions later tonight in writing or at a later meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa McLaughlin, followed by Deb McKinney, followed by John Kukunda.
Teresa McLaughlin, and I live in El Granada, and I have followed this project for a long time, and we have heard a lot about the concerns of Highway 1 and how we'll manage traffic safely. It's a blind curve there. It's a dangerous area. And my concern is that we still don't have a plan for it. We don't know how much it will cost. And my fear is that they'll build the homes and they won't have a way for people to get safely in and out. My other concern is that on page 684 of the staff report, there's a map that's out of date. It's showing beaches and public areas that are no longer present in Moss Beach. They have eroded. And it would be helpful to see that updated so that you can tell which amenities are available to current residents of this proposed project. Thank you.
Deb McKinney, followed by John Kukunda, followed by Krista Hike.
Hi, my name is Deb McKinney. I've lived on the coast side for 33 years or so. I am not in support of this change to the LCP as it is right now. We don't have the information that we need. We have all these vague promises that don't address the myriad of issues that have been brought up tonight. Safety, well, we've all heard them over and over again. They're not being addressed. Lisa asked many great questions, trying to get these answers, but it's always, we're gonna deal with that later. We'll get back to you on that. It's not at a stage right now where you guys can decide on a concrete, fully informed proposal. And I feel, and many people I've spoken to feel, that this project as it stands right now is being slid through the back door in many ways. It's not the first time that the county has done this sort of thing. And hopefully it won't be a time that'll happen again right now. Again, I'm not for this project as it stands. I think agreeing with the resist density folks that this should be scaled back completely in a great manner, because these questions have not been answered. Thank you for coming over.
John Kakunda, followed by Krista, followed by Adrian Mallinger.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Kakunda. I consider myself a progressive. I support low-income housing. I even actually offer lower-income housing in South City. And I appreciate representatives of low-income housing coming and speaking their mind. With that said, I am in opposition to this project for two reasons. One is I oppose the rezoning of the parcel from PUD 124 to 124 CD to PUD 140 CD. I feel that the Coastal Commission should be involved in the process throughout the, all the way from the beginning to the end, and it should be appealable to them. The second reason is for reasons stated by so many others. I didn't drive here all the way from, where was it, Foster City, Redwood City. I'm not from over the hill. I actually live adjacent to this proposed building. And what people have said already about the lack of infrastructure, there's it's one lane in each direction road that is one lane for miles in each direction. Traffic builds up, there's no infrastructure, there are not the stores, the shops, and 1,400 jobs. I'd like to know if there are 1,400 low-income jobs actually, or if they're just 1,400 jobs. I feel like what's being proposed is a perpetuation of a plan that is 34 years old, while facts on the ground have changed, but the infrastructure to support such a plan has not. Has not. And also, lastly, concerned that in the face of what appears to be a lot of local opposition and concern, that the Planning Commission may force this proposal through anyway and defeat the intent of this hearing. So please do listen to everybody who's local, who lives near the site, and who understands the problems and the dangers in that area. Thanks.
Krista, followed by Adrian Mallinger, followed by Candelario Solis.
Hi, my name is Krista Hike, and I may be one of the newer members of your community. I purchased a house last year in Montera. My home is on 14th Street, and the back of my home is the creek. I've been a San Mateo County resident for 45 plus years. I actually left San Carlos, Redwood City area because the development was going insane and the community was no longer a community. I'm very happy to have moved here to find a community. I can't speak to all of the very specifics that everyone else has said. I can only offer you one additional thing, which is a bird's eye view from the back of my home. That corner is very dangerous. I cannot tell you how many people I have seen almost slam each other in car accidents, how many people I have seen cross the street right there to get to the lighthouse only to hear screeching tires stop because the people coming northbound cannot see those people crossing the street. I believe low-income housing is needed. I just don't think this is the right place. If you have 71 families with children, with nothing else to do for miles, they're going to be crossing that highway or walking up and down that highway to get to the coast. Things are going to happen to them. While we're talking about safety with evacuations and fire and everything else, and that is absolutely the case, I don't want to add another safety risk, which is the children that could be coming into that community. So, thank you for your time.
Next is Adrian Malinger, followed by Candelario Solis, followed by Brian Gaffney. Gaffnell.
Hi, my name is Adrian Malinger. I live in Montera. I have 3 questions, clarifying questions from Mid-Penn. One would be regarding lights for the area. In order to have a safe parking structure and parking areas for the residents, you have to have it well lit, but what is your plan for balance to have safety for the parking there, but also maintain what the existing residents and what the new residents would like to have is that evening lack of light, just basically the stars. So that would be a question of how you balance safety and keeping the semi-rural area that we like there. My second question is on the San Mateo Planning and Building website, the first photo or drawing. There were 2 structures on the north side, just along 16th Street. I wasn't familiar, is that part of Mid-Penn? It's not an existing house that I'm aware of. And how would that be lit up and how close is that to 16th Street? If you could please clarify. And my third question is many of the residents, particularly the very, very lower income, they are vulnerable. And as such, they're going to need more resources from the police because they are vulnerable to crime. And what is Mid-Penn's plan, the manager that's on site? The police station in Moss Beach is not manned 24/7. We need support on those off hours. They come from over the hill, maybe down Half Moon Bay. So how are you going to protect those very vulnerable people that need the housing but can't protect themselves? What is your security plans on site or to get increased police? Thank you.
Is Candelario here? Okay. Brian Gaffnell, followed by Steve Wilson.
Commissioners, Brian Gaffney, I'm an attorney for Resist Density. I submitted written comments, which I hope you received. This plan has been framed today by staff as an affordable housing that's going to reduce the planned unit development. It's much more than that. I'm sure you would agree that if you had a normal plan, there was a general plan amendment, a zoning amendment, and a new PUD, you'd have an environmental review document. You don't. And you're being asked to make a decision to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors in the absence of environmental review. Instead, staff is telling you that because there's also an LCP, that the Coastal Commission will do the environmental analysis subsequently. And that will put you in a position of having to make a recommendation on the PUD, on the general plan amendment, on the zoning, without any environmental review. If you look at the staff report, there's no cumulative impact analysis. There's no analysis of the evacuation. Subsequent review by the Coastal Commission will look at impact for certain impacts such as that affect coastal resources. But something like emergency evacuation is not something that you're likely to see the Coastal Commission take up. Moreover, we raised the comment that the San Mateo zoning regulations have not been complied with here. Zoning regulations 6238.7 and .9 speak about the need for the coastal development permit to be submitted prior or concurrently with the other approvals. It's being delayed here. In addition, zoning regulations 6191 for a PUD talks about the need to have a precise plan, you have a conceptual plan, and for there to be analysis of consistency with the general plan and with an area plan. There is an area plan for the Montera, Moss Beach, El Granada area. You have no analysis of that. I'll stop there and I ask you to please read my comments closely.
Steve Wilson, followed by Steve Hyman, followed by Carl May.
Commissioners, I'm Steve Wilson, a 21-year resident of the coast side. I live a few miles south of Cypress Point. I appear for Bay Area Council's Housing Committee, which has studied and considered Cypress Point in depth and unanimously endorsed this project as being in the best interest of the coast side and for the Bay Area as a whole. Bay Area Council's endorsement is consistent with my own views, as I'm very familiar with the process of project approval, read the staff report, comments from both sides, and I've visited the site. The Bay Area Council has for 75 years been the most influential, unbiased, nonpartisan, collaborative provider of studies and recommended legislative and policy measures in Northern California. Cypress Point is, in our view, a responsible project and responsive to need. Mid-Penn, by the way, has broken its pick on available sites here on the coast side. I was involved in one of those efforts a couple of years ago as a community volunteer. Spent hundreds of hours on it. We couldn't put it together. The pro forma wouldn't work. And that's sad, but available sites are few and far between, and this is one. The dominant regional and coastside problem is housing supply and, critically, low moderate income housing. The entire area between Half Moon Bay and Devil's Slide has zero, repeat, zero, low and moderate income housing. We coastsiders have seen the objections to this project each time a project comes up, and history tells us that bowing to this point of view has cost us here on the coast side dearly. It's cost us in terms of infrastructure, because there has been studied opposition to infrastructure improvement. It's cost us in terms of tax base. It's cost us in terms of quality of life. But let's face it, there's an element here that wants things just the way they are and would unhesitatingly obstruct any project that causes a flutter in the status quo. Commissioners, please firmly exercise your authority tonight on behalf of the applicant. For everyone's sake, it's the right thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Steve Hyman. Okay. Carl May.
I too have lived here since 1974. I commenting on the need for affordable housing, why it isn't here, and so forth. I asked my wife, do you have a pocket mirror I could hold up to the county officials here, staff people from the county? You aren't paying any attention to the actual physical, material reality of our place. This affordable housing site was in the original LCP, along with two others on the coast side. None of them were a decent place for affordable housing. When I moved here in 1974, there was lots of affordable housing. There was lots of it. I had a very low wage at the time, and I bought a house. My wife has never made a whole lot of money. She bought her house, and then I moved in with her. So the trend, since the county has gotten into this, with the LCPs zoning our area in naivete about the physical condition of our area, has caused this situation to get worse. There were lots of other people in affordable housing when I first moved here. Deckhands on fishing boats, all kinds of guys involved in construction, and so forth. School teachers bought houses. That doesn't exist now because of the county. Overpopulation occurs when the number of people doing whatever they do exceeds what can be sustained indefinitely, long term. And you, the county, have created overpopulation on the coast side. We do not have the water resources. We don't have the infrastructure, but we have as much infrastructure as this coast side, this physical place, can stand. Think about what happens in a fair market economy. As something that's limited, as in the case of land and physical resources, and I will wrap up right now, becomes in short supply, those with the most money get first dibs on that. The people, once the limitations are reached, and you've long passed the limitations on the coast side, those with the most money are going to get it. They're the ones most able to pay for these expensive homes. The county has created the zoning, the setbacks, the floor area ratios, the lot coverage ratios, and so forth that dictate those expensive homes, which is why there are no cheaper things going. The county has created this situation, and the county should not be further making a mess out of the situation until they address the real-world changes that need to be made in the LCP and other zoning for this area. We are overpopulated, and you can't get away with more population without making everybody visible, including people in the new developments. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir, are you Carl May?
Yes.
We'll have Rick Lohman, followed by Mike Ferreira. No Rick Lohman? No Mike?
Good evening. My name is Mike Ferrer, speaking for the Sierra Club. I am on the executive committee of the Loma Prieta chapter and the political chair for the counties of San Mateo, Santa Clara, and San Benito. We sent a letter immediately upon learning of this project several years ago, and we specified our opposition to this idea based on safety due to the interface with Highway 1. That was primary. And also because it's equidistant, 6 to 7 miles of decent shopping from a middle school, high school, doctor's offices, the county clinic. And it just, maybe in 1983, it seemed like a good idea to set this site up, but it's now 2020. We did make one change to the letter at request because the total number of units was dropped. But I have to say that given the conditions we're looking at, if there's to be affordable housing there, that number's going to drop a lot more. Just because of the interface with Highway 1, Carlos Street, the length of that you have to go to get to these schools, and the fact that transit out here is miserable. I thought I was lucky one day when my car broke down over in Pacifica, because I broke down right next to the bus station. All the buses sit. And so I went over there. I got home, because it was a Sunday, 2 hours and 52 minutes late. Because you're on 2-hour headways. Anyway, look, I'll wrap up. The problems need more solving. We do think it's premature to be going to the Coastal Commission with so many problems and questions unanswered. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon Kwan, followed by David Shore, followed by Catherine Slater Carter.
Thank you very much. I'm Brandon Kwan. I used to be a member of the MCC and I live in Moss Beach. As a taxpayer-funded project, we should absolutely be concerned about this. And number one, I am absolutely concerned that this project is made up of plenty of quadplexes. The surrounding neighborhood is in large part single-family units, and we should actually have the project be based on part of that. And number two, I also like to perhaps the applicants can address this. Some of my concerns include strong background check. I would absolutely ask that tenants have background checks to ensure that they are legal, law-abiding local residents. And as a taxpayer-funded project, I would absolutely hope that 100% of the tenants would be local residents, as it is. And furthermore, there is no law granting the inherent right for individuals to live in their preferred zip codes. If that was the case, then maybe I should get my affordable housing in Atherton or Los Altos Hills. But I do support affordable housing. Absolutely, we could deregulate some rental ordinances we can absolutely increase in-law housing, and absolutely some farms are actually redoing their housing units for farm workers as well. And so we absolutely need to take this seriously, that although there is no right to live where you want to be, we absolutely have other solutions for these housing shortages. I absolutely acknowledge housing is a necessity, but there is no right to live in the zip code you want to live in.
Thank you. David Shore, followed by Catherine Slater Carter, followed by Wendy Singh.
Good evening, thank you for the opportunity. I support affordable housing. I've invested in affordable housing projects. As a landlord, I participated in Section 8 housing, but I do not support this project largely because of the location. Sadly, for the members of the public who are here, I really hate saying this, but after 18 years of advocacy and community involvement with the county planning department, you can expect every negative comment in opposition to this project to be ignored by the county. Because the county is, and our supervisor, Don Horsley, have already determined this project shall go forward. Everything else is just a speed bump. Nonetheless, we are here, we're going to speak. So, the location and the VMT, the vehicle mileage travel that it presents in its current configuration is actually in direct conflict with another state and county policy. And that is to have a very aggressive stance on greenhouse gas production, which affects sea level rise, coastal erosion, and the problems that we are very subject to. Unless the county walks the walk of reducing greenhouse gas emission and vehicle miles traveled, you guys are in conflict, and one side is just doing lip service, and that's not fair to anybody. It's not fair to the people whose homes are falling into the ocean here on the coast. The video presented, the marketing video from Mid-Penn, really gives you the impression that we're really working on this live-work balance. But as people have pointed out, only 51% of the housing units in here. I don't know how many residents, because you've got 1 through 4 units in there. 51% of the development is for local live-work preference. If you really want to address the VMT issue, which speaks to the greenhouse gas issue, which ties into the county policy and the urgency that we have in our country and of the world today, we need 100% local. So, to close, having complained for 2 minutes, I have 3 positive suggestions. 100% work preference, not live work, but work for people who are already working here, and that will decrease the commute. It's the only way to do it. Second, at the overarching county level, stop approving commercial development permits, because what is continuing to worsen our jobs housing imbalance. Unless you stop issuing commercial building permits, we are going to worsen the greenhouse gas problem. We're going to increase everything else. And the last thing,
I have a hard time. I've got only a few minutes left before I have to shut down. I have other people to speak.
And the last thing is rent control, which will be more effective than an isolated housing project. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Slater Carter, followed by Wendy Feng, followed by Maureen Lennon.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for coming on over here. Catherine Slater Carter from Montero. I've lived here forever, been involved with planning for a whole lot of years on the local coastal program. Tonight I am speaking as an individual. I am the president of Montero Water and Sanitary District, the chair of Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside, and I am speaking for neither agency. I also, for my experience, was an 8-year member of the Mid-Coast Community Council and was one of the founders of the Mid-Coast Community Council, now defunct, but Planning and Zoning Committee. I worked very hard on getting the LCP update going. I support Commissioner Ketchum's comments on the height and setbacks. This should fit within the community, not stand out towering over it. I do not support the rezoning. I support affordable housing in appropriate locations. I have spoken with city council members from Half Moon Bay. They have told me, and they encourage affordable housing here because it is close to urban amenities and social amenities as well. Carl May mentioned that the county is guilty of not having affordable units. I remember when there was a discussion of vacation units, vacation rentals, and I heard realtors say, we have 4 units and we're turning them into vacation rentals. So that county decision has decreased the amount of potentially affordable housing. This is an environmental justice issue. It affects low-income children, adults, and the local community. There are many, many critical issues missed in this. How many people from that project could walk to this library? The county hasn't bothered putting a library up for us. For the 40 years I've been there, we get an old bus. There are no walkable social services, no buses. There are a huge number of LCP amendments or issues that need critical EIR equivalent study. And I will close with saying several years ago, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution unanimously to encourage Caltrans to give the right-of-way, the isolated right-of-way through the back of Montera to Montera Water and Sanitary. We are going to use it for additional water resources and community recreation. County planning has stood in the way of that transfer. We have the emails, and please tell them to get off of it and transfer this land so we can work on getting more water and more recreation area. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy Singh, followed by Maureen Lennon, followed by Matt Stewart.
Hi, I'm Wendy Singh, and I'm a resident of Moss Beach. I am a physician serving the homeless and patients suffering from intimate partner violence. And while I do believe my patients would benefit with their medical disease from having affordable housing, I am extremely concerned about this proposed plan, really because I think it's a disservice to provide this housing when it is a natural disaster and evacuation concern with the added traffic. I think that when in March the tunnels were closed due to power outage, there was no really access in and out of the tunnels for about 6 to 8 hours, added to the fact that the 92 highway that day was pretty much extremely delayed due to tree trimmings from PG&E. So in the event that there were a wildfire or an earthquake, I think it would pose a public health danger to also the lives of the residents who will be living in this community, as well as the local residents. I encourage that the committee provide an open forum for a presentation on the transportation and safety evacuation changes that are proposed, a presentation as long as with open forum for the community members to be able to address their opinions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen Lennon.
Good evening, my name is Maureen Lennon. I live in Moss Beach, right on the intersection of Carlos. I will start by saying that I want to remind everybody that Mid-Penn is a private real estate development, and $1 million plus of our tax dollars are now in reserve with the county to help support this project. I am against the project, again, not against affordable housing. Location, location, location. 1,400 workers, you say, on the coast, and most of those are south of the harbor, maybe some at Sam's, but south of the harbor. You threw out the softball of 60 homeless people on the coast. I don't see anything going on here that would help address that problem of our fellow homeless on the coast. The county's growth and development plan adopted in 2017 specifically said no growth in rural areas. You can't get any more rural than Moss Beach. The city of Half Moon Bay has approached both the supervisors and Mid-Penn and said, hey, we've got a site for you. We've got a perfect site for you where there are services right there closer to town, walkable to the necessary needs of a community. This is a bad location. It just doesn't make sense to anybody, and I think that most of us are here just to express it very strongly to you. Thank you very much.
Matt Stewart, followed by Leora Ross, followed by Jeremiah Armstrong.
Hi, I'm Matt Stewart. I live in Montera. I moved here a few months last year. Thanks a lot for coming out. First, I want to say I don't know why King's still here, but he sort of stole the show. And And the other thing I've really noticed, a couple things, I moved here from Oakland. Oakland does a lot of things not great. One thing they have done well is built a lot of big stuff in smart places. So I actually believe we do need to go up. We do need to build to create just increased supply. But that is a crazy place for it. Oakland's building on BART stations. They're building on big streets with buses and things to do. You're on the moon out there, and I encourage you, when you leave today, I challenge you to go north, take the long way home. It's beautiful. You can imagine the view, the sunsets, and just drive around for like 2 minutes, turn off your car, listen. Like, there is nothing going on, and there's no way to get anywhere. And the bus here is a joke. It's really just not a place where people who don't have resources and can't get to stuff and need that help. So that's really concerning. And then the last thing is, everybody here who you've heard from Montero and Moss Beach, I haven't heard anybody really before it. And I think that's, not because we don't like affordable housing, at least that's the story we're all telling you. I mean, I really am for affordable housing, blah, blah, blah. But it's just a crazy location. And I encourage you really, please do take down my challenge, check it out on your way home, and thanks for having us out.
Leora Ross, followed by Jeremy Armstrong, and last but not least, Ken Chan.
Hey everyone, I'm Leora Ross. I'm here to support the proposal, and I'm here to talk because affordable housing has been a huge issue for my family. I live in a 3-generation household. I live with my young son and also my in-laws. And they're actually the only reason I could be here tonight because they're taking care of my kid. And I would urge you to consider all of the families who can't be here tonight because they're taking care of their children or trying to make ends meet. I met a mother tonight who was talking to me outside, and she wanted to come to the meeting. She wanted to talk to you all, but she confided in me that her kids weren't going to go home tonight because they live in a car. And they are trying to make it work out here. And the affordability, crisis is real, and there are people in their cars tonight. It's cold out there. And I would love to see houses for them so they could shut the door and be warm. I want to bring it back to my family. My sister, she has a Section 8 voucher, and she's lucky enough to have a landlord who accepts it. She's lived there for 15 years, and she would be homeless too if not for that. So as you make this decision, please consider the reality for families today who don't have shelter.
Thank you. Jeremy Armstrong, followed by Ken Chan, followed by Dan Haggerty.
Good evening, my name is Jeremiah Armstrong. I'm a former Moss Beach resident, and I moved last year in large part due to this project. And that's because I have 2 young daughters, one who's 2.5 and the other one who's 8 months old. And the day after we brought my 2.5-year-old home from the hospital, I walked her for 2 years straight until we moved down Carlos Street. And with the prospect of this project coming and seeing how dangerous Carlos Street already is, that just made it not an option for us anymore to live in a community where there would be even more traffic. It's important to note that one of the primary spots for children in that neighborhood is Moss Beach Park, which is a wonderful park. The thing is, for the children who will be living in this proposed project, to get to Moss Beach Park, they'll need to go down, whether it be Stetson, likely, or Carlos Street. Those are both very narrow streets. They're going to become even more narrow because inevitably, despite the fact that a certain amount of parking has supposedly been allocated sufficient for this project, there's no real way to enforce that, and inevitably all the adjacent streets will be parked up, as you see in similar projects like this in Half Moon Bay and similar communities. When push comes to shove, this is about making sure it's a project that's in an appropriate location to serve both the existing citizens and the incoming citizens that will live there. And as a parent of 2 small little girls, I want them to live in a community that's safe. That is by far the most important thing. And I can tell you firsthand that is not a safe place, but 200 people. Thank you.
Ken Chan, followed by Dan Haggerty.
Hello, members of the Planning Commission.
time to hear all of us and all of our voices tonight. I wanted to speak to you to lend my support for the proposed 71 homes in Moss Beach. Most of all, tonight I'm hearing a lot about how this would disrupt or interfere with the fabric of this community. I'm here to argue that it would in fact preserve it instead. Let me preface this with an example. On my way here, just outside from the parking lot to the library tonight, I ran into a mother of 4 who is one paycheck away from being displaced from her home. She's a 3rd-generation preschool teacher and a Coastside resident, and yeah, she has dedicated her life to mentoring and educating our children, our members of the community, and it's her life's work that enriches and enhances everyone's lives, the entire Coastside community's life. To lose her would be a great loss and a blow to everybody here. She and the residents that these homes will help will not only strengthen the community, but it will allow for it to stay intact. She deserves to be here. I urge you tonight to vote yes on this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Dan Haggerty.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for coming over the hill. Dan Haggerty, 31-year resident of El Granada. I am on the Mid-Coast Community Council, but I'm here speaking solely for myself. I want to say that I agree with the concerns that resist density has. I think there's some serious issues. I know the area very well, driven by it for 31 years. I want to say that I do understand the need for affordable housing here locally and throughout the Bay Area. But it really makes sense with the locations that make sense. This clearly, in my opinion, does not. So the things that we really got to look at, excuse me, fire risks, evacuation challenges, future water levels during the droughts, the traffic challenges. When you really, some people earlier have said that, one project, it's not going to make a difference to traffic. Well, you have to understand that the big wave will eventually be built out. All of the other hotels that they're talking about, and in addition to just more traffic in general, it will add up. And what we have now is we have an incredibly unsafe situation. There's no denying it. Who sees those horrible accidents on 92? They're just going to continue. And so like this project at that location, it's just asking for trouble. I've been aware of the extreme fire risks down here in the coast side since 2011. The outgoing fire chief came to one of the MCC meetings and really spelled it out there that, that's a tinderbox up there. There has been a little bit done, but it's a real, we do not want to be the next Paradise. The sewer infrastructure, it goes on, the list goes on and on, the sustainability for the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all.
That's all. Well, thank you, everybody. We've had over 50 people speaking tonight. The list of questions I heard asked is probably over an hour response from staff. So we're going to need to continue this meeting. Any comments you want to say, Steve, before we?
I too would like to thank everyone who's participated in the discussion tonight, and we will endeavor to be as responsive to the comments we've received as possible.
Chairman, can I get you to close public comment?
Excuse me?
Can I get a motion to close public comment?
Yes, you will.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor to close public comments?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 4-0. So we have coming forward, I presume are we going to be in Redwood City at a date uncertain? At a date uncertain, we'll be notified. We still have responses to your questions, discussion from the commission, and coming to a decision. So entertain a motion to continue to our data meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. I will proceed now to adjournment.